The Alpha's Cursed Mate. A Werewolf Shifter Romance Audiobook. Written by Rain Hart. Chapter 1. Whispers in the Hollow. The cold came first. Not a chill that crawled over skin, but a sinking cold, like drowning without water, like slipping through ice that had always waited underfoot. Ivy Lockwood opened her eyes into darkness. Not night, not sleep. Something colder, quieter. Wrong. She was lying on earth, not soil, not roots, but bone-dry earth, packed like ash beneath her back. Overhead, the sky didn't exist. Only thick fog, like breath that had been trapped too long inside a dying mouth. Her fingers twitched. Her body didn't move. Panic clawed up her throat. She pushed up, and her hands passed through the ground. No. She jerked upright. Or thought she did. There was no weight. No friction. Her body felt like nothing at all. I'm not. Her voice sounded like a thought half-formed, a whisper without lips. Ivy turned wildly, her heart hammering in a body she could no longer feel. Trees rose around her like gravestones, twisted with age. Vines curled from nowhere, choking stones she didn't remember. Everything was too still. And in the center of it all, beneath a crescent moon she could not see but somehow knew was there. A circle of silver ash, burnt black at the edges. Symbols etched deep into the dirt, pulsing faintly with cold light. The place she disappeared 5 years ago. The forest had changed, but this was the same. The place where her memory cut out like a severed thread. The place where screams were swallowed and searchlights turned back. Her grave. A soft sound came. Not a wind. Not a bird. A murmur, low and rhythmic, drawing her toward the trees like a tide. She turned away from the ash ring. I need to get out, she whispered. I'm not supposed to be here. This isn't. The fog closed in. Branches leaned down like claws. The more she ran, the less she touched. Feet didn't hit the ground. Her breath didn't cloud. The world spun like it was trying to spit her out. Until a house, or what was left of one, half-eaten by ivy and rot. Stones broken, windows shattered. Moonlight flickered around its edges like a wound in the fog. The door was already open. She stumbled forward, then stopped. Her reflection shimmered in the glass of a broken mirror nailed to the threshold. But it wasn't her. Not fully. Her hair floated weightless. Her eyes glowed faintly silver. And she had no shadow. Inside, candles flickered on rotted shelves. A circle of chalk marked the floor, this one newer, brighter, still wet. And in its center, a man. No, a wolf. He sat cross-legged in the ritual center, black jacket open at the throat, dark hair curling damp at his nape, tattoos curling down the back of one arm like bindings. His head snapped up, and he saw her. His body tensed instantly. Not with surprise, but fury. As if he'd just summoned something far worse than he intended. What the fuck, he hissed. Ivy tried to speak. Her mouth didn't move. Her voice came anyway, faint as frost. Where am I? He rose in one motion. A pulse of energy rolled outward from the circle. No, he growled. No. This isn't what I called. She backed up. I didn't mean to come, I don't even know how. Shut up, he snapped. You're not supposed to be here. Her whole form flickered, literally, a ripple of light tracing the outline of her limbs. Please, my name is Ivy. Ivy Lockwood. I think I'm not alive anymore. He paused. Something behind his eyes changed. Ivy Lockwood, he said flatly. The girl who vanished from Moonbound Hollow 5 years ago? Her breath caught. You know me. I know your name. His jaw clenched. I know you were part of the Moon Key bloodline. That you were meant to be dead. I didn't choose this. He looked at her as if she were filth scraped from under his claws. You don't get to say that. You're not even real anymore. Pain cracked through her like glass. Please, she whispered, voice breaking. If you can see me, if you brought me here, maybe you can help me stay. I want to live. I want to come back. You can't come back, he snarled. You're a tether. A leftover. You're supposed to pass through, not cling. But something called me, she said desperately. There was a pull. And now I'm here. Doesn't that mean something? He turned away. The silence pressed. Then, softly, what's your name? He didn't answer. But the mark on his collarbone answered for him. A silver burn, shaped like a crescent surrounded by thorns. The same mark that glowed now faintly on her wrist. No, he muttered. Fuck. No. You're my. No. You are. It wasn't supposed to be you, he snarled. You weren't the one. I didn't choose this. Her eyes welled. Neither did I. The candlelight bent around her form. Her body began to flicker again, faintly, as if the room itself rejected her. Malric Vane watched it happen. Don't vanish, she whispered. Please don't let me vanish again. You're not supposed to exist, he said, voice hoarse now, breaking at the edges. You're a ghost in the wrong damn timeline. I don't care. I want to live. Her body trembled with the effort to stay, shape collapsing in flickers of foglight. I'm not ready to die again, she whispered. Please. And then. He moved. His hand reached across the circle. Not touching her. Not yet. Just close. Her form steadied. Her glow dimmed to something softer. And her breath, faint as mist, shivered through the room. You don't belong here, Malric said quietly. But I'm here, she replied, not blinking. He looked at her for a long time. And for the first time, the fury in his gaze bent, just slightly. Just enough to show the crack beneath. You're going to destroy everything, he said. She smiled, eyes shining like death and starlight. Then you better hold on. Chapter 2, The Wolf Who Spoke My Name. The dream opened like a wound. Ivy stood at the edge of a scorched meadow, barefoot on soil that whispered memories beneath her ghost-light feet. Ash curled upward in wisps. The trees were crooked, silhouettes of things long dead, their branches clawing at a sky the color of old bruises. In the center of the ruin, a boy knelt, no older than 16, his arms outstretched over a girl's lifeless body. Ivy took a step closer. The girl's neck was twisted unnaturally, blonde curls soaked red beneath her temple. The boy's breath came in sharp gasps, as though he were fighting something invisible, grief, rage, guilt. She knew that boy. Even before he turned his face. Even before he bared his teeth at the approaching figures, cloaked men, faces painted with sigils, voices cold and cruel. Malric, she breathed. The dream shivered. He stood over the girl, growling low, refusing to retreat. She was just a child, he shouted, body trembling. You knew what they would do to her. She was cursed, one of the men spat. And you knew the price of interference. Chains clinked. Iron glinted. The air cracked with a sigil's burn. Malric lunged, teeth bared, claws half-shifted, and they struck him down. Pain thundered across the dream. Ivy reached for him instinctively, her ghost fingers brushing against his younger self's shoulder, only to be swallowed by darkness. She fell through layers of shadow, landing in the silence of a different dream. A familiar one. Stone walls. A high window. Moonlight staining the chamber floor. Malric stood in the center, older now himself. He was breathing hard, knuckles white around the edge of a desk, sweat darkening his shirt. She realized with a sick jolt this wasn't a memory. This was now. His now. He looked up and saw her. Something broke across his face. Not recognition. Accusation. You, he snarled. The room trembled. Before she could move, he crossed the space in 2 strides and slammed her against the wall, a forearm braced beside her head. She felt nothing, no true touch, but the force of his dream bore down like iron. You're not her, he said through clenched teeth. His body radiated fury, heat, grief so sharp it cracked through the veil of sleep like lightning. His voice was ragged. Don't wear her face. Don't haunt me. I'm not haunting you, Ivy whispered. I didn't mean to come here. His eyes were wild, nearly glowing. You should be gone. She held his gaze. You saved me once. I think. I think part of me never forgot. That stunned him. He reeled back, breathing harshly. What did you say? I remember a fire. Screaming. I was small. And you. Malric cursed, a jagged sound that twisted the walls. Get out. I didn't come here on purpose. Get out. The room shattered like glass. Ivy woke gasping, curled beside the glowing edge of the spirit spring, every inch of her shivering. The water pulsed faintly with spirit sigils, casting shadows on the high stone walls of Malric's manor. Dawn had not yet broken. The door creaked. She turned. Malric stood there, robe loose, hair damp from sleep. His face was pale, eyes unreadable. I told you, he said, voice low and sharp as flint. Stay out of my dreams. I didn't mean to go in, she whispered. It pulled me. You pulled me. He didn't reply. The silence stretched, taut and blistering. I saw what they did to you, she said quietly. How they punished you. For saving me. He flinched. Something ancient and hollow flared in his eyes. That wasn't you. It was. You were 5, he snapped. Barely conscious. You couldn't have remembered. I remember you bleeding, she said. I remember your voice. And I think, part of me has been looking for it ever since. Malric turned away, jaw clenched. You shouldn't exist. I don't, she said bitterly. Not really. I'm not even alive anymore, am I? Silence. I'm a spirit tethered by something I don't understand, trapped in a world that already buried me once. Malric stared at the spring water. You're the Mookie. She frowned. What does that mean? He didn't answer. Instead, he took a step toward her. She stiffened. If you truly remembered me, he said, voice quieter now, you'd know the one thing I can't afford. She looked up. What? Hope. He vanished before she could reply. Later that day, Rowan Mercer found her sitting cross-legged near the edge of the sigil pool, chin resting on her knees. You're the reason the whole house smells like burnt lavender, he said with a slight smirk. You gave him a hell of a night. She didn't smile. He sat beside her, tossing her a warm bun. She didn't need food, not really, but the scent was strangely comforting. He doesn't let people close, Rowan said. Not since the exile. Whatever you are to him, you've already gotten further than most. I'm not anything to him, Ivy said, fingers curled around the bread she couldn't taste. Rowan tilted his head. If you weren't, you wouldn't still be here. She turned to him. He hates me. Rowan shrugged. Malric Vane hates himself more. That night, Ivy sat beside the spring again, watching moonlight play across the water. She didn't mean to fall asleep. But as the shadows deepened and the sigils glowed pale blue, the pull came again, soft, irresistible. His voice found her in the dark like a memory resurrected. Don't become real, Ivy. And yet, she already had. Chapter 3. A Girl the World Forgot. The wind in Moondale tasted like rusted fences and burnt leaves, hollowed and long grieving. Ivy's bare feet skimmed the overgrown path as she ran, breathless though she didn't breathe. Her form shimmered faintly under the pale moonlight, half corporeal, nearly forgotten by the world and herself. Behind her, the silhouette of Malric's warded house faded into the mist-veined tree-line. He hadn't stirred. Or maybe he'd let her go. It didn't matter. She had to see for herself. The road that led to the town center was more memory than cobblestone. Her house, if it was still there, should have been 5 turns from the old well, beside the bramble-coated fence where her mother had planted sage. She passed a sign marking the town's edge. Welcome to Moondale. Ivy stopped. Her name wasn't there. There were no missing posters on the community board. No memorial flowers. No cracked pavement where she remembered scraping her knee. Her house was still standing, but the porch steps were warped and blackened with rot. A for sale sign leaned at an angle, the ink bleached away by sun and time. When she pushed open the door, the hinge didn't creak. It moaned. The inside smelled of mildew and frost. Her old bedroom, the one with lilac curtains and worn fairy tale books, was gutted, walls bare, floorboards missing, no furniture, no bed. It could have belonged to anyone. It did belong to no one now. "I'm not here," she whispered. "You never were." The voice came from behind her. Ivy spun. Rowan Mercer leaned against the doorway like a shadow that had peeled itself from the frame. His golden hair was damp with mist, his eyes sharp and wrong in the dark, like a knife dulled only to make the cut more painful. "Shouldn't be wandering alone," he said, stepping inside. "You're unstable. Why are you here?" He gave a lopsided grin. "Looking for answers." "You? Trying to remember who I am. Still think you're Ivy Lockwood?" She flinched. "I am Ivy Lockwood." He didn't argue, but the silence that followed dug beneath her skin. His gaze dropped, scanning the floor, the broken wall, the dustless spot where a dresser used to stand. "Pretty name," he said at last. "Pity it got erased." "I didn't erase myself." "No," he agreed. "But someone did." The words struck something low in her belly. She staggered back a step, her limbs flickering translucent at the edges. "I found something you might like," Rowan said, pulling a folded scrap of paper from his coat. "From the old library. What's left of it?" She took it. The page trembled in her hands, even though the wind was still. A diagram. A circle. An old passage, annotated in red. "Dreamwalkers cannot be summoned, only called. When they answer, it is because they are already bound." Her throat dried. "What is this?" "A prophecy," Rowan said. "About you." "No," she muttered. "About someone like me. Don't lie to yourself. It says only a fated bond can restore a ghost's body. Only the touch of a mate." She stepped back, voice hoarse. "That's not what I want. I'm not some Bond prize." "Then why does Malric keep you near?" The name hit like thunder. She shook her head. "He doesn't want me. He's trying to get rid of me." Rowan's expression darkened. "That's a lie," he tells himself. "He's always known what you are." He stepped closer. Too close. Ivy's form pulsed, reactive to his proximity, like a ripple over water pressed by a hand. Rowan reached out, not gently, to touch her cheek. His fingers didn't burn, but they sank in too easily, like she was more memory than girl. "Stop," she whispered. "You want to be real, don't you?" His hand dragged to her jaw. "You need one of us." "I said stop. You think he's your salvation?" Rowan leaned down, voice low and heated against her ear. "He's cursed, Ivy. Marked. Touching him will burn you from the inside out. He'll use you. He already did once." "No. He's just waiting for the bond to mature. Then he'll take what's his and throw you into the hollow like the others." Her voice shook. "You don't know anything." "I know enough," he growled, eyes flashing. "You're not his. You were meant for." "I'm not meant for anyone." The air cracked. Her scream split more than silence. The ground beneath them shimmered as her soul flared violently bright and then fractured. Her knees buckled. Her body flickered, limbs shredding into light and mist and soundless screams. The page she held turned to ash in her hands. "Ivy!" Rowan's shout echoed, distorted by the pulse of her breaking. He lunged, reaching for her as she collapsed inward, a dying star. But his hand passed through. She was slipping, unraveling. "Ivy, stay with me." "I'm not someone's key," she whispered. Her voice came from a place without breath. "Not again." And then she shattered into 1,000 points of light. Only the silence remained. Chapter 4, Bound by a Spell We Didn't Cast. The forest had stopped breathing. Stillness wrapped around Moonbound Hollow like a second skin, taut and expectant, as though the entire world paused to watch a single girl fall apart. Ivy collapsed into the roots of an ancient stone-pocked tree, her form flickering like candlelight battered by wind. Breathless. Transparent. Her fingertips bled light. She wasn't even sure how she'd made it this far, out of the ruined library, across the salt-marked ridge. Her thoughts tangled in a blur of fear and fury. Rowan's touch still etched like a bruise into her incorporeal form. "I'm not someone's key," she had screamed. But it hadn't stopped her from unraveling. Now the hollow pulsed around her with a low, bone-deep hum. The moon hung motionless, slashed thin and bright, illuminating the strange ring of rune-carved stones surrounding her. The ground shivered under her fading body. Then came a voice like thunder whispering through ash. "Ivy." Malric. He appeared not with steps, but with presence, as if the hollow itself shifted to let him through. His coat swept behind him like a blade's shadow, his breath white in the cold air. One look at her splintering outline, and he dropped to his knees, hand outstretched. "You left the ward," he said lowly. "Why the hell would you?" "I had to know," she gasped. "I had to know if I still existed in the world." His jaw clenched. But instead of scolding her, he pressed his palm flat against the dirt, murmuring in the old tongue. The runes in the stone circle flared. A sudden warmth bled through the cold, like being wrapped in breath or memory. Light coiled from the ground into her limbs. She screamed. Not in pain, in recognition. Because the hum in the hollow echoed the hum in him. And for a moment, just one blinding moment, she felt it. His pulse through her, hers through him. Not merely a tether of life force, but something older, wilder. A binding. The kind she had read about in half-burned texts. Soul-sharing, the last resort spell of a spirit walker. Illegal. Condemned. Impossible without consent. But they hadn't cast it. It had already been there. She clutched his wrist. "Why can I feel your heartbeat?" His eyes darkened like dusk swallowing flame. "Because something doesn't want you dead." Her chest heaved. She searched his face, looking for fury, disgust, even denial. But Malric only looked haunted. Like he'd seen this before, and lost it once already. "You didn't ask for me," she said, voice trembling. "You tried to reject me the moment you saw me." "I did reject you," he ground out. "I tried to sever the tether, to sever you. It didn't work. Because something stronger than either of us," she whispered. "Because I remember now. When I was a girl, you were there, Malric. You saved me. You pulled me from the brink." He didn't move. But a muscle jumped in his jaw. "I thought it was a dream," she said. "But you called my name then. The same way you just did." His silence was not a denial. And then the air snapped. Figures emerged from the trees in silver-lined cloaks, weapons glinting moonlight. At their center strode Luvina Ashglin, radiant and cold-eyed, her voice sharp as the edge of her blade. "I knew it. The cursed wolf harbors the moon key." Malric rose in one fluid motion, placing himself between Ivy and the approaching pack. The runes flared again, reacting to his magic, an invisible wall of force crackling around them. Luvina stopped just short of it, eyes narrowing. "Move aside, Fane. She belongs to the Hollow. You have no right to her. She belongs to no one. She's a danger to everyone. The moment her tether completes, the prophecy ignites. We'll lose the boundary. The shadows will return." "I don't believe in prophecies." "You used to." Luvina stepped closer, daring the crackle of the ward. "Before you were cast out. Before you chose exile over obedience." Malric didn't flinch. "I'm giving you a choice," she continued, voice deceptively soft. "Turn her over. Let the rites be done. Or you'll be hunted again. No sanctuary. No hollow. Not even death will claim you next time." Ivy rose behind him, trembling but upright. "Why do you want me?" Luvina smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Because you're either salvation or ruin. The moon key or the moon curse. And frankly, I don't care which. I just want it contained. I'm not some relic," Ivy spat. "I'm alive." Luvina's gaze lingered on her flickering form, half luminous with soul light, half crumbling from the strain of existing between worlds. "She can't hold much longer," the woman said. "Even with you anchoring her, Malric. Her soul is fraying. Then I'll reinforce it." Luvina's laugh was cruel and clear. "With what? Your will? Your shame? Or is this about guilt again?" Malric's silence was answer enough. And then Ivy stepped forward, hand brushing his. Don't give me up. The contact seared. Her voice cracked like dry earth. I know I'm not what you wanted. I know you tried to undo this. But I want to live. Even if it means being bound to someone who hates me. Malric turned to her slowly, shadows shifting across his face. I don't hate you. I think you hate yourself, she whispered. For not letting me die. His throat worked. Then he said, barely audible, you were the only one who ever looked at me like I wasn't monstrous. Her heart stopped. Then, I see you now. And for the first time since the binding, he pulled her into his arms. The effect was instantaneous. Their bodies glowed where they touched, like heat moving between shadow and flesh. Her soul, half-rent, settled. The shimmer in her chest stilled. She collapsed against him, sobbing once, deep and shattered. And in the moonlight, their breath came as one. Lavina didn't move, but her voice dropped to a murmur. She'll be a ruin, you know. I already was ruined, Malric said. No, she whispered. You were only exiled. This, she gestured to Ivy's trembling form, to the glowing bond blooming over her ribs like a second heart. This makes you irreversible. Then she smiled, cruel and triumphant. She is either the moon's last key, or the last lock it ever breaks. And with that, she turned and vanished into the woods, her soldiers trailing like ash behind her. Ivy's voice was raw against his chest. What did she mean? Malric didn't answer, but his arms tightened, and his pulse told her the truth he couldn't say aloud. She was no longer just a soul trying to survive. She was a prophecy that bled into his bones. And now he couldn't let go. Chapter 5: The Red Moon Hungers. The blood that bound the Bloodfawn court had long since dried into dust, but it still stained every stone in the hall. Alpha Thornblight sat motionless upon the Blackwood throne, antlered crown casting jagged shadows across the warped floor. His amber eyes glinted with the dull gleam of aged madness, the kind that had been fed, year after year, on betrayal, prophecy, and the slow rot of a legacy he'd once called divine. This, Lavina said, her voice sharp as a fong, is no longer a question of loyalty. It is survival. She stood with her spine straight, silver armor coiled around her like serpents of moonlight. The gathered council members flanked the chamber in silence, faces half-shrouded beneath wolf-bone masks. Not even the wind dared howl through the cracked, stained glass windows. All that moved was the rising tension, thick as smoke, and the stench of old magic. Thorn raised one hand. The silence snapped. From the corner of the chamber, a hooded figure stepped forward, his limbs long, crooked, his gait more slither than stride. Bishop Vex. Cloaked in crimson thread and ash-dyed feathers, he bowed not out of respect, but calculation. She is awakened, Vex murmured, voice like distant chimes beneath a frozen lake. The spirit we buried in the hollow breathes again. The seal is cracking. Thorn's fingers clenched over the wolf-carved armrest. Speak clearly, prophet. Vex lifted his head. Beneath his cowl, his eyes were pale blue, ringed with silver veins. The girl carries a shard of the old one. Gasps hissed from around the room. Lavina's joy tightened. That's impossible, she spat. The tomb was bound in 9 rites. Nothing escaped. Nothing physical, Vex corrected. But essence, soul, hunger, these things are harder to cage. He unwrapped the bundle in his arms with surgical care. Inside was a disk of stone, jagged, inscribed with runes that pulsed red beneath the flicker of torchlight. Cracks splintered across its face, and within them a faint thrum. A heartbeat. This is a dream fragment pulled from the mind of a sentinel who touched her soul form, Vex continued. He died weeping fire. Thorn rose slowly, robes of black and rust-colored fur trailing behind him like smoke. His boots echoed as he approached the artifact. She is the key, then, he said. As foretold. Lavina hesitated. Or the curse. The prophecy was never clear. No prophecy is, Vex whispered. That's why it always comes true. A tense beat passed. Then Thorn laughed, low and deep, like a cave waking from slumber. "Prepare the hunt," he said. "Send every fang who remembers war. We ride before the next blood moon." Lavina frowned. "You would assault the hollow again? That would mark us." "It marked me long ago," Thorn interrupted. His gaze turned on her, heavy as gravity. "When I took in the traitor boy and called him son. When I let him live instead of burn. My name was carved into fate the moment I hesitated." He stepped back into shadow, voice rising. "Malric chose exile over obedience. He shelters the girl, not out of mercy, but because the shard inside her calls to him. They are not lovers. They are bound by something far worse." Vex tilted his head, soul raveling. Thorn's growl was thunderous. "No more half measures. The girl must be erased. The boy with her." He turned to the altar at the far end of the hall, where the skull of the first wolf lay wreathed in withered ivy. Reaching down, Thorn dipped his fingers into the obsidian basin at its feet, marking his brow with blood. "I swore upon the hollow once," he murmured. "Now I swear upon its end." Outside the council chamber, the wind had teeth. Lavina stood upon the frost-slicked balcony of Silverbone Keep, watching storm clouds gather above the twisted forest below. The moon was hidden, but her pulse beat louder with every heartbeat of the earth. Behind her, footsteps. "Vex. You knew it," she said without turning. "Didn't you?" "I knew she was marked," he answered. "But not that it would be her." Lavina exhaled, breath fogging the air. "She doesn't even know what she carries." Vex was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, "That's why she's dangerous. She believes she's innocent." Lavina glanced back at him, brows drawn. "And that boy Malric? He still thinks he can outrun his fate." Vex smiled without warmth. "You once said the same, Lavina. You believed love could unmake prophecy." "I was younger," she said bitterly. "And less betrayed." She stared out toward the hollow again. "I'll lead the vanguard. Myself." "No need," Vex said mildly. "You'll want to arrive at the altar while she still breathes." She shot him a glare. But he was already murmuring again, fingers weaving in the air. The dream fragment in his palm pulsed once more, brighter this time, as if the girl's fear had reached it even across distance. "She is dreaming now," he said. "She sees glimpses. She remembers things she was never meant to." Lavina folded her arms. "And if the seal breaks before we arrive?" Vex's eyes glowed faintly. "Then we are too late." And the hollow burns. Far below, in the ruins of the dream temple where the spirit of the old wolf was once bound, something stirred. Not in flesh, not in breath, but in memory. The scent of ivy. The sound of a girl's scream. And then, blood on white stone. "I dream of the key," Bishop Vex whispered, almost reverently. "And she opens the lock with her heart." Back in the council chamber, Alpha Thorn stood alone before the altar. His shoulders heaved. His hands trembled. He reached into his cloak and pulled out a pendant, a small stone charm, cracked, bound in silver thread. A child's gift. Malric had given it to him the day he was named heir. For years, Thorn had kept it. Hidden. Untouched. He dropped it now into the basin of blood. It sank without sound. "You were never my son," he said. "Only the wolf who would bring ruin." His voice broke. Then he turned to steel. "Let the hunt begin." Chapter 6. Do you regret waking me? The stone floor was cold beneath Ivy's bare feet. The air was colder still, threaded with threads of silver light that pulsed from the arcane symbols etched into the underground chamber's floor. Spirals of ancient runes, half buried in dust and memory, glowed faintly with a heartbeat rhythm she swore matched her own. She stood at the center of it all, unmoving, trembling. Malric was silent, standing just outside the outermost ring of the spirit-weaving circle. His black coat hung open, the white shirt beneath soaked from the mist that had followed them in from the forest. He looked like something carved from midnight and iron, beautiful, immovable, unreadable. You brought me here to chain me, Ivy whispered, her voice rasping from the weight of unspoken things. Not to save me. No, Malric said at last, his tone low and graveled. To keep you alive. Her laugh was dry, brittle. Is that what you call this? Binding my soul with blood and ink and whatever this is. You don't even know what I am. I do. His voice cut across the silence like the edge of a blade. He stepped forward, into the first ring, and the lights beneath his boots shimmered in welcome. You're the reason I breathe like I still belong to this world. Ivy's eyes burned. She shook her head. You didn't even want me awake. Don't twist this. I didn't twist anything, she snapped. You did. You kept me half dead. A secret. A memory in your basement. The runes flared in response to her fury, casting sharp shadows across the curved stone walls. The pressure in the room shifted, thickened, until it sat on her chest like a storm. Malric stared at her as if he could hold her together with his eyes alone. You were breaking, he said quietly. I had to act. The ritual is the only way to stabilize your soul form until we understand what the dreams mean. Until we know how to protect you. Protect me? Her voice cracked, laced with disbelief. Or protect yourself? He flinched. Just barely. But she saw it. Ivy stepped toward him. The circle didn't stop her, no barriers rose to push her back. Whatever spell he'd used, it hadn't been meant to trap her. You need me to break your curse, she said softly. Isn't that what this is? You touched me when I was a child. You knew even then I wasn't normal. You used my bond. You marked it. I never marked you, Malric growled. But you wanted to. He didn't deny it. The space between them narrowed. The runes beneath them pulsed in time with the thunder of their joined heartbeats. Ivy could feel it now, that cursed gravitational pull, his magic drawn to hers, their essences brushing like fingers through veils. Malric's hand rose, hovering inches from her cheek. His fingers twitched. But he didn't touch her. She tilted her chin up. You want me here. But you hate that you do. I don't hate it, he murmured, breath hot against her skin. I fear it. Why? His eyes dropped to her mouth, lingered there, then shut hard. Because desire is the oldest kind of ruin. And I can't afford another ruin. Ivy's breath caught as he leaned closer. Their bodies didn't touch, but the energy between them coiled like wildfire beneath the skin. Her voice was a thread. Do you regret waking me? His eyes opened slowly, glowing faint gold. Every moment I don't touch you, yes. The words fell over her like an unraveling spell. Ivy's hands trembled. She reached out, just a breath, just a whisper of motion, and let her fingers graze the base of his throat. He shuddered. The muscles in his jaw tightened, and he swallowed hard, like he was choking on every instinct that screamed to take her. But then his hands caught her wrists, not cruelly, but firmly, and held them between their chests. You don't know what I am, he said again. His voice shook this time. Then show me, she whispered. Let me see what's under your fear. The circle flared. Energy surged through the room, flooding her limbs with something too vast to name. Her head tipped back as his essence collided with hers in a silent explosion of shared magic. For a moment, she wasn't Ivy and he wasn't Malric. They were fire and moonlight, gravity and ruin. A heartbeat trapped in eternity. Malric's forehead pressed to hers. Ivy, he breathed, hoarse and barely human. If I want you like that, I'll burn us both. She blinked through tears she hadn't realized were falling. Then burn me. For a single, terrible second, he almost did. His lips hovered at her mouth. His breath shook. His hand slid to the small of her back, fingers twitching with restraint. But then he jerked away. The bond snapped like a whip and the chamber shivered. I can't, he said, his voice strangled. You would break. No, she whispered. I already am. He turned his back on her. Each step he took away felt like 1,000 knives in her chest. At the door, he paused. Without turning, he said, You asked if I regret waking you. She waited. His voice was soft, distant. I regret not waking with you. Then he left. Ivy sank to the floor in the center of the circle, the glow fading around her like dying stars. She wrapped her arms around herself, not to stay warm, but to keep the shattered pieces from falling too far apart. Unseen in the shadows near the ceiling, Rowan Mercer withdrew from the narrow viewing slit. His eyes, usually calm, now pulsed with something wild and acidic. He had seen too much, and he had no intention of giving her up. Chapter 7: Dreams You Shouldn't Enter. The room was quiet, except for the fluttering pulse of candlelight and the soft hiss of steam coiling off the ruin-burned floor. Ivy lay curled atop a slab of cooled obsidian, her fingers slack over her stomach, the tips still glowing faintly from the unfinished sigils etched into her skin. Malric sat nearby, unmoving. He hadn't meant to doze off. His body, stretched too long and worn too thin, had given out in the hush of the ritual chamber. Now his head drooped, wolf-marked hands braced on his knees, breath shallow. And somewhere beyond the edges of waking, Ivy slipped into him. It began like mist at the corners of her vision, soft and golden, strange and wrong. Then the world turned. The ritual circle vanished. Stone became moss. Air turned to wind-sweetened rot. Ivy blinked once and found herself barefoot in a moonlit glade where the trees leaned like they were listening, where breath echoed without a body. Malric. Her voice didn't carry. This was not her dream. The heaviness told her that immediately. The air was denser, woven with grief and memory too ancient to be hers. She turned. The forest opened. A shrine, no, a ruin, stood crooked and crumbling in the clearing ahead. The bones of a once great temple to the old wolf kings. Ivy's feet moved without her permission, drawn toward the broken altar stone where a child knelt in the dark. The boy had black hair matted with blood, and a tail he tried to saw off with a rusted blade. No, stop, Ivy choked, lurching forward. But this wasn't now. It was memory. Dream. Trauma caught in loop. Still, she fell to her knees beside the boy. Her hand moved through his shoulder like mist, phasing. The boy didn't see her. He just kept cutting. You're not wolf enough, a voice coiled out of the trees. Luvina emerged, dressed in the ceremonial leathers of a matriarch general, her yellow eyes gleaming like molten hate. She towered over the child, claws tapping the altar stone. You'll never be enough, Malric. No matter how much of yourself you carve away. Ivy turned, blood boiling. The child turned too, lips trembling. I want to be good. I want to be chosen. Luvina knelt. And with terrifying tenderness, she touched his face. Then let me make sure no one chooses you ever again. Her claws pierced the boy's chest, right over the heart. Not physically, but spiritually. Ivy saw the flare of gold inside him, that flicker of a soul bond still unclaimed, and Luvina tore it out like silk from a throat. You don't get to love, little curse. She held the flickering mark aloft. You were born to guard the gate, not pass through it. The dream snapped. Darkness slammed shut like jaws. And Ivy bolted upright into an entirely new nightmare. Malric was on top of her. No, not the Malric she knew. His eyes were gleaming silver, pupils blown wide. His teeth bared. His claws pressed into her neck just enough to draw stars at the edges of her vision. You're not her, he hissed, voice rough with sleep-mangled memory. You don't get to stay. You don't get to replace her. Ivy didn't fight. She only whispered, voice hoarse, who is she? The rage in his body froze. His nostrils flared. He inhaled her scent like it stung. Then, with an anguished snarl, he shoved himself off of her, stumbling back against the wall like he couldn't trust his own limbs. Ivy sat up, rubbing her throat. Blood thrummed behind her eyes, but it wasn't fear, it was sadness. Deep, aching sadness. Malric's chest heaved. Sweat clung to his temples. His claws slowly retracted. She was the only one I couldn't save, he said finally, voice ragged. The only one who looked at me like I was something worth staying for. And I let them rip her apart. Ivy said nothing. She rose slowly, letting the silence stretch until it hummed. "I'm not her," she said at last. "No," he murmured. "You're just another girl with stars in your eyes and a leash around your fate." She stepped forward. Her bare feet made no sound on the stone. "I didn't choose to be this," she whispered. "Whatever you think I am, I didn't ask for it." Neither did she. Malric turned away. His shadow stretched long on the wall, monstrous in the flickering candlelight. Ivy watched the tremble in his hand as he pressed it flat to the stone, the runes under his palm flaring with frustrated heat. "I thought I could keep you safe," he said. "Thought I could control it this time." Ivy swallowed. "Control what?" He didn't answer. His breath was loud in the silence. Then, softer than she expected, he said, "Dreams are dangerous. Especially the ones that remember." She stepped closer. "I saw the altar. I saw what they did to you." He stiffened. She reached out, fingertips barely brushing the nape of his neck. "You don't have to hide it from me." "I do." "Why?" "Because I still want you," he said, his voice breaking. "Even now. Even when I know how this ends." She stood very still. His voice cracked again. "I want to believe you're different. But I've bled for hope before. I've died for it." Her touch drifted down his spine. "And if I stay?" Malric turned. Not suddenly, no beastly snarl or flinch. Just a slow, reluctant swivel until his eyes met hers. He looked haunted. Hollow. But somewhere, beneath the layers of warning and retreat, something in him softened. "If you stay," he said, "you'll become the thing they hunt." "I already am." His brow twitched. "You don't understand. They'll rip out your soul to see if it fits their prophecy. They'll flay your dreams for scraps of meaning." Ivy stepped closer, close enough that her breath ghosted his cheek. "Then let them come," she whispered. "I've walked through worse." Malric's hand found hers. Not like a lover. Like a man about to fall off a cliff and choosing, for one cursed heartbeat, to trust the wind. He exhaled. "Then let her go." "You should sleep," he said. "Before I change my mind." Ivy lingered for a moment longer, eyes searching his. Then she turned, walking back to the slab, leaving behind the echo of her footsteps and the weight of her gaze. Malric didn't move until she was still. And even then, he only whispered to the dark, "Please, don't be her." Because if she was, he wouldn't survive losing her again. Chapter 8. The Red Oath Shall Burn. The fire was fed with teeth and bone. Within the courtyard of the Bloodfang Sanctum, the pyres rose like columns of a dark temple, their flames tinged not gold or orange, but crimson, guttural red, hungry red, like blood singing from a wound too deep to clot. Wind howled through the open altar, but it did not douse the fire. The fire was sacred. It burned in time with the pulse of the oath being cast, drawn from the breath of wolves and the rage of those wronged. Luvina Ashglen stood before it all, the wind clawing her braid loose, ashes clinging to her cloak. Her armor was ceremonial, black and silver with the glyphs of her line etched into every scale, but her eyes were war. "They have taken her in," she said, voice low and taut, barely above a snarl. "And still the hollow dares bar its gates against justice." Alpha Thornblight sat behind her on the obsidian throne, shoulders massive beneath his pelted mantle, expression unreadable save for the way his jaw flexed, slow and deliberate. "It is not justice that drives you," he murmured, resting a heavy hand on the hilt of the war blade resting beside his throne. "It is jealousy." Luvina didn't turn to look at him. She watched the flames instead, let their twisting dance fill her vision until they blurred into the image of a face she didn't want to remember. "I do not deny it," she whispered. "But jealousy burns clean." A faint laugh, cold and ragged, coiled from the shadows beyond the firelight. "You would claim virtue from obsession, child," said Bishop Vex, emerging from the edge of the sanctum like a stain that refused to stay gone. His robes were stitched with flayed wolfskin, and the iron rings on his fingers pulsed faintly with dull, pulsing red. Luvina's voice was calm. "Obsession is for the weak. I still choose. I still wield my blade." Do you? Vex tilted his head. Or is it wielding you? Thorn raised a hand, silencing them both. The oath must be sealed. A soldier stepped forward, baring his neck. A brand was pressed to it, a sigil of flame devouring a crescent moon. He did not cry out, though his teeth cracked from the strain. Another followed. And another. Dozens knelt in blood and embers, offering their flesh to a cause none dared question. Luvina held out her arm last. I vow this in full sight of the burning moon, she said, as the iron sigil bit into her skin. Any who shelter the girl shall be named traitor to the pact. I shall carve them down, and silence her scream before the eclipse takes her voice. Thorn nodded once, as if satisfied with the savagery of her devotion. Then ride, Luvina Ashglin. Make war beautiful again. She did not bow, only turned. Only walked into the storm's slick wind with her blade gleaming behind her shoulder and the taste of blood already thick in her throat. Far from the firelit yard, in a glade drowned in bone-colored fog, Bishop Vex stood beneath a dying tree. The tree bore no leaves, only shriveled wolf pelts and cracked fetishes of jawbone and ash. At its roots, a shallow basin filled with silver ash steamed faintly as Vex cut across his palm and let his blood spill into it. Speak, he hissed to the hollow air, his breath frosting. I offer what remains of the fourth tongue. I open the ear. Speak to me. The wind stopped. Then, something colder than wind slid between the trees. It was not a voice, not entirely. It was the memory of a howl made flesh, something that vibrated in the marrow and whispered straight to the spine. The seal grows thin. Vex's eyes rolled back white as the ancient syllables clawed into his mind. His body jerked once, then stilled. The key walks again. He shivered, a smile stretching slowly over his bloodless lips. You mean the girl, he murmured. The one the hollow protects. She bleeds where the world once broke. And her death would. He let the question hang. The whisper curled like smoke through his skull. Uncage me. Vex laughed. Not loud, but with a shivering pleasure that made the fog lean toward him. They think she is just a girl, he crooned, voice lilting. Just a fated mate, a witch-born seer, a relic of a lost bond. But you. His hands spread open, blood dripping onto the roots. You know the truth. Her blood is your ink. Her scream is your key. All we need now is a door. He dropped to one knee, not in reverence, but in hunger. Give me a moon to bleed, he whispered, lips trembling, and I will give you a world to burn. The fog pulled close. Tight. The tree cracked, groaned like something dreaming of fire. Vex's eyes opened, glassy with awe. It begins. At the forest edge of Moonbound Hollow, a red flare lit the sky. It was the sign, the oath made manifest, glowing like spilled wine in the clouds. Luvina stood at her command post, her soldiers bristling behind her. Each bore the silver-bone blade, war-forged, thirsting for cursed blood. She drew hers last, letting it catch the light of the blood-stained heavens. You all know her name, she said, voice fierce but too calm to be natural. You know what she is. What she threatens. What she stole. The soldiers growled assent, steel and fong ringing the night. Luvina raised her sword high. But I will be the one to bring her down. Someone asked, soft, half-frightened, even if she is his mate? Luvina smiled then. Not sweetly. If he dares raise claw for her, she said, then I will burn down every root of this forest and dance over its embers. No one questioned her again. She lowered the blade. And somewhere deep in the land, the red oath flared, catching on the branches like a warning. Or a promise. Chapter 9, She's not a weapon, she's mine. The wind was knife-sharp at the ridgeline, scouring Ivy's cheeks with a sting that made her eyes water. Trees thinned at this altitude, leaving only jagged stone and frost-kissed grass. The moon hung low and swollen, half-veiled by bruised clouds. Below the crag, the landscape sloped into a valley of ash-colored mist, Moonbound Hollow's outer rim. Her breath came in white gasps as she pressed forward. She didn't leave a note. She didn't dare say goodbye. Malric had given her shelter, risked himself to hold her together with a fragile blood mark, but she couldn't let him shatter alongside her. Not when others were already circling like wolves over a wounded doe. She had seen it in Rowan's gaze, in the whiff of Luvina's name on Vec's lips. Something was moving. Ivy had become bait in a game she didn't understand. She stumbled onto the Soul Lock Bridge, its ancient stone arches slick with dew and engraved with fading sigils. Her hand trembled as it slid over one of the carvings, something older than wolfkind, older than any clan's claim. She wasn't halfway across before the first silver glint cut through the fog. Luvina stepped onto the far end of the bridge, sword bared, silver light running down its carved spine. The silver bone blade, the one they said could sever spiritual bonds, even unformed ones. Leaving him already? Luvina's voice was dry, almost amused. Did he bore you, or was it guilt that made you run? Ivy halted, fingers curling. I'm not yours to track. No, Luvina agreed. But you were mine to destroy the moment he claimed you. She raised the blade, and Ivy caught a shimmer at its edge, an echo of something spectral. Not just steel. The soul rift magic that only the Ashglen heir could wield. You want to kill me, Ivy said quietly. Why not finish it back at the sanctum? Because this, Luvina stepped forward, is not about you. It's about what you represent. The blade swept upward. It's about reminding Malric that no matter how deep he buries himself in ruins and rituals, he doesn't get to keep pretty things. Ivy's heart thudded, but she didn't run. She raised her chin. If you have to tear me apart to make your point, then maybe he was never yours to begin with. The silver slashed toward her shoulder. She flinched, but the blade never landed. A howl split the clouds above, violent and raw enough to rattle the sigils beneath her feet. Then the ridge behind her exploded. Malric didn't descend the slope, he fell through it, a blur of black and scarlet, his body no longer bound by human grace. His form twisted mid-leap, half man, half beast, claws elongated, fur bristling, fangs glinting as his mouth opened in a roar that cracked across the hollow. Luvina barely had time to turn before he struck. They collided with a crash that sent cracks veining across the Soul Lock Bridge. The silver blade skittered across stone as Luvina rolled away, eyes wide with more than pain. You! Malric's shape pulsed, spine arching with unnatural muscle, fur spiraling over bone, eyes no longer amber but molten gold laced with streaks of blood. His breath was fire. His voice, when it came, was warped by a snarl. She's mine. Luvina scrambled backward, silver dust trailing from her palms. You shouldn't be able to fully shift, she breathed. Not with that curse still. Malric moved before she could finish. He didn't maul. He pinned. Clawed hands locked over her shoulders as he drove her to the stone and held, jaws bared, breath raking over her cheek. Ivy stood frozen as Luvina gasped beneath him, not in pain, but in stunned recognition. You didn't tell them what you are, she whispered. Malric growled low, feral, and shoved off her as if even touching her sullied his skin. He turned to Ivy, and then stopped. For a breathless beat, he was still. The beast in him heaved, shoulders rising and falling with shuddered restraint. But his eyes locked on Ivy with a clarity that shouldn't have existed in that form. Her heart clenched. He was terrifying. Not just because of the claws or the inhuman breadth of his chest, but because he hadn't lost himself. He'd chosen this. Chosen to let the beast rise for her. I told you not to follow, she whispered. His voice was a scraping wreck of human syllables and wolf growl. You were bleeding. She hadn't realized she was. Her arm throbbed. A shallow slice from Luvina's blade. I'm fine, she said, but it came out choked. Malric took one step toward her, then another. Steam rose from his back. His hands were still claws. You're not, he said. You're not fine. And you're not leaving me. She didn't run. Didn't flinch when he stopped inches away, his clawed hand raised, hovering, shaking. "I can't touch you like this," he rasped. Ivy reached up anyway, slowly guiding his hand to her shoulder. His claws curled, hesitated, then rested with deliberate care. "I'm not afraid of you," she said. He let out a strangled sound, as if the words hurt more than claws ever could. "Don't say that." "Why?" "Because I'm not what you think." His hand flexed against her skin, barely restrained. "You touch me like I'm just a man." "But he bared his teeth, "not just that." "I know." She leaned in, her forehead brushing the plane of his chest, hot, rough, trembling. "You're something ancient, wild, and breaking." He groaned, the sound raw and undone. Her fingers found the place where his neck met his shoulder, still warm, still pulsing with life beneath all that fury. "If it hurts to hold back," she said, "then don't." His control shattered. He seized her waist, lips crashing to hers, breath like smoke and thunder. Ivy gasped, but didn't pull away. His mouth devoured. His teeth scraped her lower lip, a low growl rumbling deep in his throat. She tasted rain and ash and something darkly sweet, like burnt honey. Their bodies pressed together, heat to heat, need to need. The world fell away. The mist. The wind. Even Luvina's presence seemed distant, insignificant. Malric bent, scooping Ivy into his arms without breaking the kiss. His claws raked through her hair, down her spine, pressing her against him like he couldn't bear a sliver of space. She whispered his name. He snarled hers like a prayer. Then, just when her legs wrapped around his waist and her fingers sank into the thick fur at his nape, he stopped, froze, pulled back with a hiss like fire meeting water. "I can't," he panted, forehead pressed to hers. "Not here. Not like this." Ivy's lips were swollen, breath ragged. "Because of her?" He shook his head once. "Because I want you whole. Not broken by me." Behind them, Luvina staggered to her feet. Blood smeared her temple, but her gaze had changed, no longer triumphant, but frightened. "She shouldn't be able to bear your shift," she muttered. "She should have burned." Ivy turned to face her. "Then maybe I was never meant to be just a weapon." Malric's voice came low, heavy with warning. "Touch her again, and I'll burn every oath your house ever swore." Luvina's lip curled. "She's not yours to keep." Malric's eyes blazed. "She is mine to protect." And Ivy, breathless and aching and still half aflame from his touch, stepped closer. "I chose him," she said. Even as the wind howled. Even as ancient forces stirred beneath the sigils of the Soul Lock Bridge. Even as whatever power surged in Malric's veins hinted that he was not born from wolves alone. She chose him. Even if it burned her to ash. Chapter 10. The Memory of Her Breath. The water was silver, still as breath before a scream. Ivy knelt at the edge of the mirrored lake, cupping the icy silence in her trembling hands. Moonlight threaded through the ghost pines overhead, painting shifting patterns across her skin as if the forest itself remembered a version of her she had long forgotten. The lake was called the Spirit Wells, water said to reflect not one's face, but one's truest past. Not what one remembered, but what one had chosen to forget. Her bare feet hovered just above the rippling threshold. She hesitated. Not from fear of the cold, but the memories beneath. "Ivy," Malric's voice murmured behind her, low and fraying at the edges. "You don't have to go in alone." She didn't turn around. "I need to know," she whispered, voice so thin it barely touched the air. "You said I forgot something. But my body remembers. When you touch me, when you speak," she swallowed. "I need to remember why." She slipped into the water. It closed around her like a second skin. Cold, but not cruel. It welcomed her. The lake did not reflect the present, it swallowed her whole. Then she was somewhere else. A forest. Night. Rain tapping like claws on broken branches. She saw herself, 5 years younger, bruised and breathless, running through the trees. Wolves howled in the distance. She tripped. Fell. Blood blossomed down her arm like red ink spilled across a forgotten page. Then came the sound, the low, deliberate growl of something neither man nor beast. She turned. A boy stood there. Silver-eyed, shirt torn, barefoot in the mud. His body shifted with pain he did not voice. Not fully a wolf. Not fully a boy. And yet he stepped between her and the howling pack. He had saved her. Not just from the wolves. From the memory. The dream shifted. She saw herself clinging to him in the downpour, her lips at his shoulder, murmuring something she couldn't now hear. And then, his claws glowing, carving a warding sigil into the tree behind her, shielding her scent from the others. He had broken the law. For her. He had wiped her memory. For her. Ivy woke with a gasp. The lake trembled around her body. She surfaced like a ghost coming up for air, chest heaving, hair plastered to her face. And Malric was there, already in the water, already holding her. His arms wrapped around her as if he had never let her go. "You remember," he said. She could barely speak, but nodded. Her voice cracked. "It was you. I forgot you." Malric's expression didn't twist with anger or triumph. Only sorrow. "You asked me to. You begged me not to let the others know. So I took it from you. I made you forget." Ivy pressed her forehead to his chest, breath stuttering against the steady thrum of his heart. "You saved me. And I forgot." His hand drifted up, brushing back wet strands from her face. "You were just a girl. The weight of that choice, it wasn't yours to bear. But it was your punishment," she said, voice trembling. "They hurt you because of me." "They always would have," he replied. "But you were the first thing that made me believe I could be more than what they called me." Their foreheads met. Their breath synced. One inhale. One exhale. No pain. No static. The link between them no longer a wound, but a melody. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly, lips a whisper away from hers. "If you run, I won't chase you. But I'll remember. Every time." Ivy stared at him. And then, with the ache of old longing curling through her ribs, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't fierce. It wasn't desperate. It was an apology. His hands curled around her waist beneath the water, drawing her into the press of his warmth. Her fingers slid up his chest, resting against the place where his heart pounded hardest. The lake shimmered, the surface breaking around them as if it too couldn't bear the stillness. They didn't speak again for a long time. Only held each other. Only breathed. Only remembered. From the edge of the trees, unseen, a shadow watched. Rowan stood cloaked in silence, his hands clenched at his sides. His eyes, usually so patient, so kind, were nothing but glass now, sharp and unreadable. He watched Ivy tuck her face beneath Malric's jaw. Watched her press a kiss to his throat. Watched the way the cursed alpha held her as if he were afraid to break her, or be broken by her. "She doesn't belong to him," Rowan whispered, voice so soft the wind stole it. His fingers traced the twin scars on his own wrist, the mark of a broken bond. Then he turned and vanished into the night. Chapter 11. The Wolf Who Waits. The mist had teeth that morning. Ivy stood alone at the edge of the ruined altar, where pale stone met moss, where roots once cradled wolves' prayers. The earth still remembered. Beneath her bare feet, she could feel the thrum of old power, forgotten, buried, but not dead. Malric had left before dawn, his departure marked only by the rough whisper of his coat against stone and a lingering heat on her wrist where his fingers had held her. Only a day, he'd promised. "I need the silver dream ash. It's the only thing that stabilizes your connection now." But it wasn't the burning ache of absence that unsettled her. It was the silence. She sat cross-legged by the altar, back straight despite the fog curling over her shoulders. Her breaths came slow. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Don't chase the dream. Let it come to you. Except the dream had already arrived. "I didn't expect to see you without your wolf," said a familiar voice. She opened her eyes. Rowan Mercer stood a few paces away, his hands tucked into the sleeves of his pale cloak. He smiled softly, as if he hadn't just appeared unannounced on sacred ground. "I could say the same about you," Ivy said warily. Rowan stepped closer, the fog parting like breath around him. "You're trembling. I'm meditating. You're freezing." Before she could protest, he knelt beside her and reached out. His fingers brushed her temple, gentle and clinical all at once, wiping away a droplet of water, not from sweat, not from tears, but condensation from the ghostly fog that clung like second skin. "Malric doesn't let you breathe, does he?" Rowan murmured. "Always watching. Always protecting. It feels like safety until it suffocates." She stiffened. "He's not." "I know what it's like," he interrupted. "To be someone's purpose. To forget where you end and they begin." She tried to pull away, but he didn't press, only let his hand fall. "I came to remind you," Rowan said quietly, "you can choose to belong to yourself." The words lingered long after he stood and disappeared into the fog again. Ivy remained still for a long time. But her pulse had changed. Her breaths were no longer even. Something in Rowan's voice had cracked a layer she didn't know was still frozen. She closed her eyes again. And fell. The world spun inward. Mist thickened. The air shifted from damp and cool to sweet and cloying, like overripe fruit and iron. Then, stone beneath her knees, thorny vines growing through the altar cracks, and a sky the color of bruised silk. Not here. A dream. But wrong. She knew Malric's scent even in dreams. This place reeked of nothing. "Ivy." She turned. Malric stood on the ridge, back to her, coat fluttering in an unseen wind. He didn't move. She ran toward him, feet slipping over moss, her throat catching on his name. "Malric." He kept walking. Each step took him further, into the shadow of something vast and black and breathing. "Please." She stumbled. Fell. Hands scraped stone. And then, "You cry for the one who cages you." The voice slithered into her skull like smoke. "But I can give you more than chains shaped like comfort." She tried to cover her ears. It didn't help. "All you have to do is open the door." Her fingers shook. Her lips wanted to say no. But in that moment, she saw it, not Malric, but another figure cloaked in bone-pale fur, holding a blade of teeth. Watching. Waiting. "Open the door, little star. Let me show you what freedom truly tastes like." She screamed. Woke. The real world slammed back into her with a gasp. She choked on air. Her body was cold, her skin damp. And her wrist hurt. She looked down. A red mark ran from the heel of her palm to her forearm, a thin, blood-tinged gash, as if something had tried to open her from the inside out. The bone altar loomed above her, silent. The mist had not cleared. She blinked hard. Her vision was still blurred when she saw a silhouette sitting a few feet away. Rowan. He was perched on the edge of a broken stone, legs crossed. In his palm glinted a small shard of polished bone, slick with blood. Her blood. She flinched. What did you do?" His gaze met hers with terrifying calm. "You were slipping. I brought you back." "You cut me," she whispered. "To anchor you." He held the bone up, inspecting it like a jeweler. "This is called a memory pin. The old packs used them for dreams that bled into madness. You were convulsing. If I hadn't." "I don't remember convulsing," she said, voice hoarse. "No, you wouldn't." He pocketed the bone. Ivy staggered to her feet. "Where's Malric?" Rowan stood too, slowly. "You still think he's your savior? You don't get to." "I'm not your enemy, Ivy," he said, stepping closer. "But he's not your mate." The world stilled. "You don't know that," she said, though her voice shook. Rowan's eyes darkened. "He's one of them. The ones touched by something older. Look at what he's becoming. Do you think your body can hold the full bond with him without breaking?" "I already did," she said, chin rising. "Then you're dying slower than I thought." She slapped him. The crack echoed, sharp and real. He touched his cheek, and to her shock, he laughed, quiet and bitter. I suppose it's easier to hate me than doubt him, Rowan said. But you should ask yourself why you forgot the boy who saved you. And who made you forget? She staggered backward. Leave. Careful, he murmured, turning away. There are wolves out here who wait. But not all of them wait for you. He vanished into the fog. She collapsed to her knees. The altar stones hummed again beneath her palms. But now the rhythm had changed. It no longer echoed safety. It whispered warning. From the far ridges, a growl rolled across the trees, low, possessive, angry. Malric. He was coming back. And he had felt everything. Chapter 12. The One Who Betrayed Her. Ivy's feet dragged over the moss-laced stones of the clearing, barely keeping up with Rowan's firm grip on her elbow. Dusk had soaked the forest in hues of violet and ash, and the silence between them pressed heavy, almost sacred. Not even the wind whispered through the canopy. "Where are we going?" she asked, breathless, her unease growing with each step deeper into the shadow pine's heart. Rowan didn't look at her. "Where you were always meant to be." The answer chilled her. "What does that mean?" His silence was worse. When they reached the bloodstone arch that marked the boundary of the shadow pine altar grounds, she halted, her body refusing to go further. "Rowan, this doesn't feel right." "It isn't about feeling right, Ivy," he said softly, but there was steel behind it. "It's about being right." Before she could react, a cold wind surged forward, and with it came Luvina Ashglen, her dark hair flowing like night itself, her amber eyes glowing with hunger. Ivy's breath hitched. "Why is she here?" Luvina smiled, serene and cruel. "Because she has something I need. And you have something to give." Ivy backed away, eyes darting to Rowan, searching for an ally. But he didn't meet her gaze. Instead, he stepped aside, offering her like a lamb to slaughter. "No," Ivy whispered. "Rowan, no." "You were never going to be safe with him," Rowan said, gaze fixed on the distant altar. "He's twisted your mind, locked you in his obsession." "I'm freeing you." The words broke something in her. "You're giving me to her?" "Like I'm a gift," Luvina finished, stepping closer. "Or a vessel. Depends how you look at it." Before Ivy could scream, silver runes flared beneath her feet. A net of light tangled around her wrists and ankles. Her limbs buckled. She hit the ground hard. Darkness wrapped her, not sleep, not death, something between. A ritual sleep. A spirit binding. She felt her consciousness sink as if pulled underwater. Faintly, she sensed herself being lifted, dragged, through cold stone corridors. Then everything bled away. When Ivy awoke, it was to a hall lined with towering statues, wolves cast in obsidian, each crowned with antlers of bone. A fire flickered in the blood troughs, casting shifting shadows across the ceiling. She was kneeling, her wrists bound with red-threaded chains. Her dress was gone, replaced by ceremonial silks that clung to her with sickening reverence. Her throat ached, and her body trembled, not from fear, but something deeper. A pulling at her spirit. Luvina stood before her, garbed in ritual armor etched with ancient glyphs. "You wear pain well," she murmured, stepping closer, dragging a clawed finger along Ivy's cheek. "But let's see how you wear sacrifice." "I'm not yours," Ivy spat. Luvina knelt, gripping her chin. "You're no one's. Not anymore. But you will be something greater. The wolves are starving for a spirit host, and you," she leaned in, voice low and intimate, "you have just enough soul left to devour." The altar behind her shimmered with power. Ivy could feel it pulsing like a second heartbeat. Something ancient stirred beneath the stone. And as Luvina raised the bone-tipped dagger, Ivy's breath hitched, not in fear, but in memory. Malric. He would come. He had to. But the silver blade sliced across her chest before she could scream. Pain erupted, sharp and searing. A red glyph burned itself into her skin just above her heart, writhing like a living brand. Then came the chain, a hooked, soul-draining link clamped around her neck, tightening. Luvina whispered something in the old tongue, and darkness flooded Ivy's vision. Her spirit thrashed against the ritual's grip, but her body remained still, forced into kneeling submission. Then, from the far end of the hall, the doors burst open. Wind howled. And in its heart, Malric. But he wasn't a man. He was wolf. Fangs bared. Claws glinting like obsidian. Eyes burning with fire too old to name. He crossed the stone floor in a blink, slamming into the nearest guards. Flesh tore. Bone cracked. A feral roar shook the altar, and Luvina reeled back, shielding her face. Too late, she hissed, voice shaking. Malric didn't care. He leapt onto the dais and shattered the runes with a single swipe. The altar cracked, blood soaking into the marble like ink into paper. But the curse had already taken root. Ivy collapsed into his arms, breath shallow, body cold. "Don't touch her," Luvina shouted. "The mark will bind you. You'll share her pain." Malric ignored her. He pressed his face into Ivy's neck, breathing her in, trembling with fury and terror. She stirred faintly, lips parting. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't come closer. I'm not yours anymore." And then it appeared. A blood-red glyph, now mirrored on his neck. Malric staggered. The mark hissed, then seared into him, connecting their spirits with threads of burning pain. Luvina gasped. It shouldn't have worked. No one can take the pain of the host. But Malric stood, cradling Ivy in his arms, the red glow of the curse bleeding into the silver of his own spiritual scar. He turned slowly, eyes fixed on Luvina. "You were wrong. She was meant to be a vessel." Luvina screamed. "A sacrifice." "She's not a weapon," Malric growled, voice not fully human. The glow flared behind his irises. "She's mine." Chapter 13. Pack Against the Light. The stone gates of Blackridge creaked open beneath a storm-darkened sky, the howling wind lashing against Malric's cloak as he stepped into the mountain's stronghold. His arms cradled Ivy's limp body, her skin cold as the snowflakes that melted on her cheeks. Blood smeared his knuckles, and behind him trailed the scent of broken oaths. The wolves of the Highland clans lined the edges of the stone courtyard, their faces carved with suspicion and fear. Old warriors narrowed their eyes at the girl in his arms. Whispered curses slithered from the crowd. "Is that the cursed one? She bears the mark. Where did he take her? What has he done?" Malric ignored them. His steps were slow but resolute, each one an act of defiance. He didn't kneel when he reached the high dais of the council. His gaze swept across the marble faces of the elders, lingering last on the black-cloaked Alpha Thornblight, seated at the head of the tribunal, his silver braid looped like a noose over his chest. "Elders of the High Clans," Malric said, voice hoarse. "I bring Ivy Lockwood before you not as a threat, but as the bearer of the Moonkey mark." Enough. Alpha Thorn stood. His voice carried the weight of judgment. "You have crossed the sacred bounds, Vane. You disappeared without sanction. You brought a human into our sacred lands. And now you dare speak of the Moonkey as if it were salvation." "She saved me," Malric growled. "When the poison from Luvina's rites nearly destroyed me, it was her bond that held me tethered. Her spirit holds the balance. You feel it, you fear it. But that mark does not curse her." Alpha Thorn's eyes flared amber. "You speak of balance when your every breath reeks of defiance. That woman has polluted your blood, your mind. The old laws are clear. Bring her forward." He stepped down from the dais. With a signal of his claw-ringed fingers, the guards approached, snarling and hesitant. Malric didn't flinch. He only tightened his grip on Ivy. "She's not yours to burn." The room erupted. "You would protect a dreamwalker? She bears the blood sign. He's bewitched." A sudden hush cleaved the chaos. Luvina Ashkelon entered, her robes dark with the ink of dream sigils, eyes lined in silver. She walked barefoot over the cold stones like a spirit from the hollow, her voice honeyed venom. "You think she came here by fate?" Luvina asked, stopping beside the elders' circle. "You think it is love that binds them? She turned to the crowd. I saw it. She carries the wolf god's imprint within her. Her dreams fed it. Her mind opened the passage. Malric's jaw clenched. Luvina smiled, cruel and poised. She is the touchstone. The key to the hollows breaking. She was meant to be the vessel. The moment he stole her away, the rites began unraveling. She is not a vessel. Malric roared. She is not a thing to be carved into prophecy. She is the reason the hollow burns, Luvina whispered. And you? She's breathing, a voice from the side murmured. Everyone froze. Ivy stirred in Malric's arms, lashes fluttering like frost-laced feathers. Her eyes opened slowly, glazed and weary but aware. She looked up at the towering spires of judgment, then to Malric, whose body had gone rigid as stone. Her lips trembled. You carried me all this way? He nodded. I'm sorry, she whispered. I made everything worse. You didn't, he said, voice cracking. You didn't do this. She blinked. Her gaze drifted to the elders, the ring of wolves who'd drawn their judgment like blades. They'll kill you, she said softly. Because of me. They'll have to go through me first. Ivy stared at him. You die for me? He looked at her, no shields, no fury. Only the desperate ache of a wolf who had already lost too much. I would, he said. A silence dropped like snow over the courtyard. Then a slow voice spoke. Let her stand trial. If she is the key to the hollow's collapse, the flames will reject her. But if she burns, then we are rid of the danger. Alpha Thorn raised a hand. By ancient right, we call the flame of judgment. Bind her to the trial pillar. No, Malric said, rising. Guards pressed forward. He bared his teeth. No one touches her. But Ivy touched his wrist. It's all right. Ivy. She smiled, faint as breath. Let them see. He held her gaze for a long, breaking moment. Then, reluctantly, he set her down. Guards flanked her. She didn't flinch as they led her to the base of the altar. The pyre was unlit. Chains of silver root wrapped around her wrists and throat, locking her to the trial pillar. The elders stood. Alpha Thorn raised his torch. The fire will judge. If she is true, she will be spared. If she is cursed, it will consume her. Flames surged to life. The crowd held its breath. But before the fire could lick her feet, a glow burst from her chest. The blood mark on her collarbone began to burn, not with heat, but with light. Pale silver fire danced along her skin. Her head tilted back, lips parted in a silent cry. Smoke curled from the mark. Her body arched, not from pain, but from something stranger, resonance. The fire did not touch her. But the mark consumed itself. From the viewing platform, Luvina paled. No, she whispered. That's not how the binding should react. Ivy's eyes opened. They glowed. The wolf god's echo pulsed through the air. And in that moment, every wolf present felt it, not a curse. A return. Malric pushed through the guards, running. But the mark flared once more, and she screamed. He caught her just as her knees buckled. Her skin was blistering cold, the breath gone from her lips. She gasped in his arms. Don't touch me, I'm not yours. Not anymore. A streak of light surged from her wrist, and with it, the red mark carved itself into Malric's collarbone. He hissed in pain. Behind them, the altar cracked in half. Chapter 14, You Called Me Back. The fire did not burn her. Gasps rippled through the crowd gathered around the blazing pyre, their breath catching in their throats as Ivy Lockwood stood barefoot within the ring of sacred flame, not a blister or scorch upon her pale skin. Her gown, torn from earlier restraints, flared slightly in the updraft, but no smoke clung to her. No ember dared kiss her flesh. Instead, her blood mark glowed, bright as moonlight, etched deep across her chest in a jagged sigil that pulsed with unnatural rhythm. The wolf god's mark, they called it. A curse. A fate. But Ivy, weak, trembling, defiant, lifted her chin and walked forward, straight through fire that should have devoured her. Her voice was thin, yet it carried like thunder across the stunned silence. "I'm not untouched," she said. "I'm not innocent. But I'm not what you fear." From the foot of the tribunal dais, Malric Vane surged to meet her, face tight with rage and desperation. But the flames licked between them like a chasm. He could not step through. He had already tried. The fire had scalded him, sent him reeling backward as if the hollow itself had rejected him. But Ivy? She walked like a phantom, her hair unbound and haloed with smoke. Her bare feet pressed the burning stones and did not blacken. She paused a breath away from him, from the barrier of holy flame. "Do you know why?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Why the flames don't take me? Why your people's sacred trial cannot touch me?" Malric's lips parted. He didn't answer. "Because you already called me back from the fire," Ivy whispered. "Years ago. You saved me, and you didn't even know what you were doing. You gave me a part of yourself." A shiver ran through the crowd, a wordless ripple of unease. The spiritual elder of the pack stepped forward, his long robes dragging ash in their wake, his silver-threaded voice barely steady. "She speaks of the soul binding," he said. "The mark left when a wolf gives their spirit freely. But no record. She's lying," someone spat. "A trick. A witch's illusion." "No," Ivy interrupted, louder now. Her gaze bore into Malric's like a blade. "Tell them. That night in the ravine. I was dying. You held me. You touched my mind." He flinched as if struck not by her words, but by the truth buried in them. "I didn't know," he said hoarsely. "I didn't know what it would do." "You left your soul inside me," she said, taking a half step forward. The flames curled up her calves, but did not bite. "You made me yours. I was drawn to you ever since. It wasn't fate. It wasn't prophecy. You summoned me. And I came." Her voice broke. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You called me back from death. And you left me to burn alone." The crowd watched like statues, the fire reflecting in their eyes. Malric's voice cracked. His fists trembled at his sides. "I thought if I denied it, if I resisted, it would protect you. I thought keeping you away would save you from this. Then why did you keep looking for me?" Ivy whispered. "Why did you keep saving me?" His hands curled into fists. "Because I was already in love with the curse," he said. "And I have been for 5 years." Her lips parted, breath hitching. The fire flared between them, not in rejection, but in acknowledgement. The ancient mark upon her chest blazed with white heat, and Malric instinctively stepped forward again, this time gritting against the burn. He reached into the fire. She met him there. Their hands clasped through the flames. And then the flames vanished. A cry rose from the crowd. The spiritual elder dropped to one knee. The fire pit lay cold. Ivy collapsed. Malric caught her just in time. Her skin was hot, too hot, and her body trembled as if seized by a force far greater than herself. Her mouth moved, but no sound came until her head rolled back against his shoulder. Her voice, when it came, was a broken murmur against his collarbone. "Don't let them touch me again." He cradled her close, shielding her with his body. But others had already seen what he had not. A second mark. Beneath the original sigil, glowing in a deeper red, a second wolf god's emblem had appeared, twisting, splitting, clawing across her chest like a branding from within. "Double marked," someone whispered. "No, impossible. She's a vessel. She'll be torn apart." Malric looked up, eyes wild. "What does it mean?" The spiritual elder, now pale as bone, stepped forward. "Two souls. Two spirits. One body cannot contain them both." "Then we'll separate them," Malric said. The elder shook his head. "Not without the completion of the double binding. Not without another to bear the second mark with her. Otherwise, she will break. The god's fury will consume her." Ivy stirred again, her lips parting in pain. Her hands clawed at her chest as if trying to rip the mark free. "Make it stop," she whispered. "Please, it hurts." And then her eyes rolled back. Her body went limp. Malric held her tighter, as if holding her soul together with sheer will. "I won't let her break," he said, eyes flaring silver with the buried rage of his bloodline. "I don't care what your laws say. I'll carry it with her." "You can't," the elder said grimly. "The second spirit chose her. You are not enough." Malric stared down at the fragile body in his arms. Her breath came shallow, her pulse flickering. The marks glowed against her pale skin like chains from another world. "I will become enough," he said, voice low, guttural. He looked up at the gathering, his voice rising. "Bring me the rites. Bring me the chains. Bring me the old blood and the moon's blade. If it takes every drop of my soul, I will not lose her again." And above them, the blood moon cracked open in the sky. Chapter 15: Blood and Moonfire. The wind through the spirit grove did not howl, it breathed. A reverent hush hung among the ash-limbed trees, whose trunks bore the glyphs of 1,000 blood oaths carved over centuries of shifter lore. Pale lichen glowed on ancient bark, and above, a blood-hazed moon pulsed faintly in the velvet sky, mirroring the steady thrum beneath Ivy's ribs. The sacred stone ring stood silent, half buried in roots and time. At its center, the ritual markings shimmered, once dormant, now trembling with hungry anticipation. She stood at the edge, barefoot on the moss-wet earth, the hem of her shift whispering against her skin. Each breath burned in her throat. Each heartbeat echoed in her scars. Malric stood across from her, silent. Shadows spilled from him like ink. His hands, always steady, always deadly, flexed and clenched at his sides. The silver pendant at his throat caught the moonlight, and Ivy's chest twisted. "I don't want to hurt you," he said, voice stripped of its usual bite. "I can't promise I won't." She stepped forward, closing the distance one careful breath at a time. "You already have." His jaw tightened. Ivy's fingers went to the neckline of her tunic, loosening the lacing until it fell open to her collarbones, revealing the blood brand that had marred her chest since the failed offering. The mark flared softly, moonlight catching in its creases like fire in a wound. "You're not the monster they fear, Malric. But if you are," her gaze locked onto his, unwavering, "then let the monster claim me. I'm done running." The silence broke like glass. In one breath, he was before her. Malric's hands came to her waist, hesitant, fingers splayed over the curve of her hip. Her body stilled. Then his touch slid higher, rough palms gliding over the warmth of her ribs, up to her throat. Not choking, not hurting, just anchoring, like he needed to know she was real. "I'm not good," he whispered into the space between her lips and jaw, breath hot. "I'm not safe." "But you're mine," she whispered back, her words trembling against his skin. "And I'm yours." When his mouth met hers, it wasn't gentle. It was a collision of everything they'd buried: shame, fury, longing. Ivy's knees buckled as Malric pressed her into him, one arm banded around her back, the other threading through her hair. Around them, the ritual symbols flared, white light licked with blood-red pulses. The stone beneath their feet shifted, runes awakening. A howl echoed through the trees, not one of rage, but of recognition. Spirits stirred. The grove leaned in. Malric broke the kiss with a snarl that wasn't entirely human. His irises glowed gold. Ivy cupped his face, pulling him back down to her, pressing her forehead to his. "I would rather be broken by you," she said, breathless, than whole for anyone else. The wind rose. Ivy cried out softly as the air turned molten. A sharp heat lanced through her spine. She gasped. Malric's hand caught her, held her steady. The spirit link had begun. Blood for bond. Pain for permanence. He raised his wrist to her lips. She hesitated, then bit. Iron burst on her tongue. He did the same, his fangs sinking gently into the inside of her shoulder. Her breath caught. Their blood mingled in the air between them. The moon blazed. The ground trembled. Then their foreheads touched again, and Ivy felt it, the tether. A thread of thought, breath, essence. His grief. her defiance, his rage, her ache, all folded into one coiled, pulsing bond. She gasped again, pleasure and agony blurred, just as his voice whispered into her mind, "I see you." And she answered, "I'm not afraid anymore." Their bodies arched toward each other as the bond sealed. The blood oath markings surged crimson, and the entire forest seemed to exhale. The air turned thick with moonlight. Ivy felt the imprint flare across her heart, as though branded from within. It was done. Or so they thought. A gust of black wind slithered across the ritual stones. Ivy's body sagged against Malric, and he caught her easily, holding her to his chest. But his eyes were no longer on her. Above, at the outer edge of the grove's altar, a figure stood draped in raven-feathered robes, arms outstretched, eyes glowing with hollow light. "Bishop Vex." "How generous of you," Vex murmured, his voice cutting through the silence like oil over fire. "You've opened the lock. Now I only need the door." Malric's breath hissed between his teeth. Ivy stirred, half-conscious. "What?" Vex's smile didn't reach his eyes. The double imprint. Twin blood. Bound by soul and spirit. "You are no longer key and keeper. You are the gate." Malric growled, pulling Ivy behind him instinctively. Vex lifted one hand. The altar stones cracked. The wind turned. And something ancient stirred beneath the earth. Chapter 16. The Grave Below the Moon. The trees bled silver beneath the unnatural glow of the blood moon. Even the leaves, once dark green and full of life, looked brittle and hollow under its haunted cast. The wind did not rustle, nor did the wolves howl. All sound had dropped away, as if the entire forest held its breath for what had been summoned. The ritual was over, and something had been torn loose. Malric stood just beyond the stone circle, arms tight around Ivy's trembling body, her bare skin damp with sweat and the last flickers of the twin bond's completion. He could still feel her breath fluttering against his neck. She hadn't spoken since the flare of moonfire had died down. But she hadn't needed to. He had felt everything through the link. Until suddenly, he felt nothing. "Ivy," he whispered. His voice cracked. "Stay with me." She blinked slowly, her irises swimming with too much white, too little light. Her skin had taken on a pale, luminous sheen, beautiful in a way that unsettled even him. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Then her body arched in his arms, and a scream burst from her throat. It wasn't hers. It was layered, warped, a sound that didn't belong in any living creature. Malric staggered backward, clutching her shoulders as she writhed, eyes rolled back, breath coming in gasps that fogged even the cool night air. From above, a dozen crows screamed and took flight in a spiral, then dropped like stones mid-air. "No," Malric hissed, holding her tighter. "Not now. Not again." Behind them, the runes of the ritual stones glowed red, then cracked down the center. And from the high altar carved into the side of the cliffs, a voice coiled through the trees like smoke. "Yes, now." Bishop Vex stood upon the ridge, his skeletal arms stretched wide, his blind eyes glimmering like twin coals. "The soul is unlocked," he murmured. "The grave is open. And she is ready." At his whisper, Ivy's eyes flew open, and they were no longer hers. For a heartbeat, the entire forest bowed to the weight of her presence. The elders arrived too late. Storming through the dark paths of the woods, wolf forms and armored shapes descended upon the ritual site. The twin moons etched on their helms gleamed with desperate conviction. "She's not one of us anymore," barked Elder Garamond. "She has the god's mark, and she walked into the flame unburned." "What more proof do you need?" "She's a vessel," roared another. "The spirit within her will tear through the bonds of this world." "She is my mate," Malric roared back, snapping. "She's not yours to save." Lavina's voice, sharp as a blade. "She's not even herself anymore." Ivy had collapsed, cradled in the grass, her lips bleeding where she'd bitten through the pain. But her hands were stained with glowing marks, ancient runes spiraling along her forearms, shimmering like ink mixed with moonlight. Malric hovered over her, shielding her from the half-circle of drawn weapons. "I saw the vision," one of the seers whispered. "She kills him. The Alpha. He lies broken at her feet." Malric looked up at that, eyes full of thunder. She'd never. She already did. The seer didn't blink. "In another life. In another dream." The words rippled like poison through the air. "I'll go," Ivy said quietly. Everyone turned. She was sitting up now, naked save for the remnants of her ritual robes, but there was clarity in her eyes. The kind of clarity that comes only after the soul has split. "I'll go into the vault. If it means protecting this pack, if it means ending this, I'll do it." "No," Malric growled. But she smiled at him, gently, as if he hadn't just burned the world to keep her warm. "You've done enough. You've risked everything. I'm not losing you again." Ivy stepped toward him, barefoot on the blood-soaked moss. She placed a palm over his heart. Her fingers trembled. Her voice did not. "I don't want you to carry my curse. You brought me back to life. But some things weren't meant to stay." He caught her wrist, pressed his lips to her knuckles. His throat worked. "Don't you dare speak of yourself like that. I'm not just me anymore." Her breath hitched. "There's something else inside. I can feel her. I am her. If I stay, she'll take me over. You saw what I became." "I saw you," Malric said. "I still do." She shook her head. "If I come back," she said softly, "I want you to know it was me who left. Not the thing inside me. Me." He opened his mouth, but no words came. So he nodded. Once. As if by doing so, he wouldn't fall apart. They descended together, hand in hand, through the silent woods and into the grave beneath the moon. The burial vault was carved in spirals into the oldest roots of the land. No torches were needed, the walls shimmered with buried power, glowing faintly in resonance with the marks on Ivy's body. At the final gate, 20 feet high, carved with the names of dead gods, Ivy stopped. Malric turned toward her. She kissed him. A kiss not of passion, but of memories made too fast, and a goodbye etched in the shape of mouths trembling to stay together. Her whisper broke against his cheek. "If I still wear this face when I return, will you know me?" He caught her face in both hands, forehead pressed to hers. "I'll know your voice. Even if the stars fall silent, I'll know your voice." She smiled, eyes shining. And then she stepped into the darkness. The gate closed behind her with a sound that was not metal on stone, but bone on bone. Somewhere deep beneath, something shifted. Malric stood alone before the gate. Above them, the blood moon split. A crack of light tore across the night sky. And in his chest, where the mate bond pulsed, he felt the first fissure form. Not a break. A tear. As if half his soul had gone quiet, and the other half had just begun to scream. Chapter 17. His mark still burns. The moon hung heavy and low over the Ashkelon highlands, bloodless and pale as bone. Wind howled through the wolf camp, scattering ash and dust, rattling the wooden beams of the ancient tower ruins where Malric had secluded himself. The others had stopped asking where he went at night. Even Rowan only watched him with something like pity in her eyes, pity and quiet anticipation. She knew. They all did. Since the night Ivy walked into the grave beneath the moon and sealed herself from him, the Alpha had not been whole. Malric stood in the cold shadows now, bare-chested before a broken slab of stone carved with forgotten runes. His breathing was heavy. His hands trembled, claws half-shifted, twitching as though uncertain of what form they belonged to. His mark, the twin blood crescent that once bound him to Ivy, flickered on his chest like dying embers. "She's too far," he murmured. "Too far, and still she burns in me." He could feel her absence like a knife. The bond had frayed at the edges. Sometimes it dimmed so low he thought she might be gone. And yet, in moments like now, it pulsed, dim, fragile, but undeniably there. Behind him, footsteps. Rowan's voice was soft, too careful. "You can stop this," she said. There's a way. Malric didn't turn. I know what you're about to offer. Then you know it's not pity, Rowan said. It's mercy. The pain is eating you alive. You want her free? There's a ritual, reverse binding. Cut the twin mark. Return the pain to her, and she carries it alone. You'll be whole again. He looked down at his hands. You think I want to be whole without her? She's gone, Malric. She's breathing. His voice was low, feral. I would know if she died. I'd feel it. But the mark is failing. It'll fade completely soon. If you wait, if you keep reaching for something that isn't reaching back. He turned slowly, his eyes gleaming like a predator's in the dark. You don't know her. Rowan looked away. I've seen many mates go mad. Some howl at the moon until their voice gives out. Others tear themselves apart. He said nothing, and she left him in silence, her footsteps quickly swallowed by the wind. Alone, Malric knelt. Before him lay the forbidden scrolls, bone-white with dust, sealed in wolf blood and time. He broke them open with one claw, the air immediately thickening with ancient power, something older than Alpha Law and deadlier than Oathbreakers. The instructions were scrawled in faded ink and cracked charcoal. To break a twin mark, one must bleed at the source. One must offer the soul's edge willingly, claw to flame, name to silence. Malric placed his hand over his chest, directly on the mark. His skin seared against it. I called you to me once, he whispered. But I never told you why. He dragged a claw through the center of the mark. Blood welled, hot and dark. Pain flared through his ribs, down his spine, up into his skull, but he didn't stop. He carved again, deeper, until the symbol glowed not with shared warmth, but with the violence of loss. Forgive me, Ivy. He bared his chest to the open night, wind slicing across his skin like a judgment. The fire pit before him ignited with blue flame as the runes activated. He tilted his head back, baring his throat to the stars, and let the magic take him. He screamed. But not from pain. From absence. Because with every beat of the ritual, the tether between them thinned. Her heartbeat grew fainter in his mind. The dreams she used to stir in him, gone. The sound of her voice, already faint, flickered like candle smoke. Ivy, he rasped. Don't go. Not like this. Not if I'm the one. His knees buckled. The runes burned brighter. He remembered the first time she'd touched him, afraid, unsure, but with such will. He remembered how she'd stood in flame for him, walked barefoot across searing earth just to reach him, and how he hadn't known then that he'd already cursed her. The flames exploded upward. Far below the surface of the world, in the sealed grave Ivy had entered days ago, a shift stirred the dust. She had not moved in hours. Her body rested in near suspended stillness, surrounded by carved walls and ancient bones. But her eyes flickered now beneath shut lids, her fingers twitching against the stone floor. And a single tear slid from the corner of her eye. Blood, she gasped. A searing pulse ignited along her ribs, the twin mark glowing like a brand once more, only now it bled. Her back arched as pain lanced through her chest, and for a moment, all she saw was him, Malric, kneeling beneath a pale moon, hand pressed to a fresh wound over his heart. You fool, she whispered through clenched teeth. Why would you try to sever it? She could feel it unraveling. Not completely, but enough to fray their bond, enough to make her breath come shallow and sharp. She pressed her palm against the mark on her own chest. Malric, you said you'd never let go. She should have been furious. But all she felt was a quiet ache. He was hurting himself to save her. Above her, something stirred. The old tomb responded to the mark's rupture. The shadows coiled. A breath of cold air swept through the sealed corridor, even though no door had opened. And in a distant place neither fully living nor fully dreaming, Bishop Vex stood atop a high altar, surrounded by snarling wolves and flame-lit stone. He watched the stars shift, the blue fire crack open the tower sky, and smiled. So, he said to no one. He chooses pain. How touching. He lifted one hand, fingers tracing the air like a conductor. Let the bond snap. He said it with no rage, no urgency. Only satisfaction. And may he live long enough to beg for it back. Chapter 18. The Child of Moon and Ruin. The silence inside the tomb was the kind that pressed down on the bones, thick and ancient. Ivy's breath fogged the air in slow, deliberate puffs. The walls pulsed faintly, the blood-lit glyphs stitched into the stone like veins, each one trembling with an energy she could no longer pretend wasn't hers. Her fingertips tingled where they brushed the symbol beneath her. The twin moon sigil, the mark of the wolf god's broken seal. Her body had gone cold hours ago. Or days. Time meant nothing down here. Not when her blood had stopped obeying her, when the voice inside her skull no longer sounded entirely her own. Ivy, it whispered again, soft as fur and sharp as fong. Why do you keep trying to forget? She clenched her jaw, but something inside her, a thread too taut, snapped. A shriek rose from the dark, inhuman and rising in pitch until it twisted into a howl. Her back arched off the stone floor, pain cracking down her spine like fire. Her eyes rolled back. The world exploded inward. Then nothing. Then moonlight. She stood barefoot in a field she did not remember, under stars too still to be real. The air was heavy with ash and rosewood. Before her, a fire burned in a ruined village. Children screamed. Wolves tore through the brush. And she was there. Herself, but not. The woman in the vision had Ivy's face, but not her eyes. Those eyes were black, filled with ruin and radiance, mouth moving in prayer, hands slick with blood. She knelt in the center of the inferno, lifting her arms toward the sky. Give him back, the woman begged. Take my body, just bring him back. A howl answered. Behind her, smoke parted. The wolf god emerged. Towering. Antlered. Eyes pale as salt. Its body shimmered between form and formless, divine and monstrous. Ivy couldn't move. The woman in the vision bowed until her forehead touched scorched earth. I offer myself, the woman whispered. The god didn't speak. It opened its maw, not in rage, but grief. And then Ivy knew. She had been the god's worshipper. She had started the ruin. No, she choked. No, no. The vision flickered. Another landscape surged forward, inside her own mind now, in a realm beyond time. She stood in a forest woven of bone-white trees and blue flame. At its center, a cradle of thorns. Inside, a small creature curled, a wolf pup, silver-pelted, moon-marked. It opened its eyes. You're me, it said in a voice like her own childhood. And I am you. Ivy fell to her knees. I destroyed them all, she whispered. Because I loved too hard. Because I couldn't let go. The pup crawled into her lap, rested its muzzle against her heart. You burned for him, it murmured. You begged a god to break the cycle. Now you carry me. I'm not strong enough. Your strength, it said. You carried grief across lifetimes. You carried me. Tears slipped down her face. She curled over the wolf, arms wrapping around it. If you are truly mine, then sleep with me. The moment the words left her lips, the forest groaned. Moonlight shattered. A scream echoed through the tomb as Ivy's body convulsed on the ground above. Her fingernails clawed the stone. Her mouth opened, not in pain, but in song. A sound older than language. A mother's howl, grieving and defiant. Above, the ceiling glyphs cracked. On the far side of the tomb, behind a shroud of shadow, Bishop Vex's eyes snapped open. The torches guttered out. She did it, he breathed, voice twisted with disbelief and fury. She caged the god. He flung his arm outward. The stone altar groaned as blood surged from its grooves. She thinks she's won, he spat. But she's only sunk the knife deeper. Beneath the tomb, Ivy floated in the cradle of her mind, the spirit pup nestled in her arms. Her body lay broken, but her soul had made its choice. She would not be Vex's weapon. She would not be the god's vessel. She would be the mother of something new. The sigils above her pulse flared once, twice, then shattered. The mountain trembled. And far away, on the wind-swept cliffs of Ashglen, Malric jolted awake, his chest seared by light, the mark of their bond flaring with heat. "Ivy," he gasped, voice hoarse. But there was no answer, only the echo of her howl in the night. Chapter 19. The Burned Oath. The sky above the spirit altar churned with storm-colored clouds, thick with omens. Wind howled through the bone arches, sending the ceremonial braziers into a wild frenzy of flame. Every alpha stood tense, lined along the perimeter of the sacred stone ring, their eyes sharp with ancient wariness. None dared speak above the sound of the approaching sacrifice. Malric walked barefoot across the scorched path, his cloak discarded, his chest bare. The ritual blade hung from his belt, its obsidian edge pulsing with runes that matched the one glowing on his sternum. A twin moon sigil, faint now, waning like his strength. He knelt before the central pyre, head bowed, and laid his hands across the sacred slab carved with the names of every bound pair who had broken the mate bond by death or exile. His name would be next, beside hers. "I call upon the ancients," his voice rang low, rough with resolve, "to sever what the gods once dared to carve into our souls." A hush fell. The wind stopped. From the inner circle, Luvina stepped forward, her red robes whipping like flame, her expression sharp with sorrow. "Don't," she said softly. "Malric, don't do this." He looked up at her. There was no rage in his gaze, only the weariness of a man who'd fought too long, and the despair of a lover preparing to die. "She's gone," he said. "I feel it. Every moment, the bond grows colder." Luvina dropped to her knees before him, grasping his wrist. "That's not absence. That's depth. You feel her falling because she's still tethered to you. Because you matter to her. If you cut the bond, she will become a wandering soul," he finished for her. "Yes, I know. Then why?" "Because if she dies in that tomb, alone, I'll tear the gates of the underworld apart to find her." His voice cracked. "But if I die with this bond still bleeding inside me, I might damn her too. I won't take that chance." Luvina stared at him. "You'll be unmarked. I'll still remember. Memories fade. But the burn won't." He stood. "Let the pain be mine." The elders stepped into position, their palms raised, chanting the rite of severance. Fire encircled the altar, a living wall of orange and white. Malric stepped into it. As the flames licked up his legs, the first crack sounded. Bone. It echoed like thunder. He screamed, but didn't falter. The mark on his chest began to glow. Then it smoked. His spine twisted, ribs flaring. The shift began, but halfway through, his body locked. Half human, half wolf. For along one shoulder, nails splitting into claws. Blood streamed from his mouth. The elders stopped chanting. The fire dimmed. "Continue," he snarled, staggering forward. "Your body may not survive the full sundering," one warned. "I don't care." With a roar, Malric tore open the front of his chest, digging claws into the sigil as it pulsed with defiance. The smoke turned to flame. "I vow," he screamed, voice raw with agony, "to burn every star in the sky if it means she lives." His knees buckled. "I give my soul to ruin, my name to ash, my heart to the void. Just let her go free." The mark flared, blinding white. Then died. Silence fell. Malric collapsed, chest heaving, eyes wide. The air was thick with smoke and blood and the silence of something ancient refusing to die. Then, impossibly, the mark on his chest sparked again. Dimly, as if reluctant, one of the spirit keepers gasped. "The bond still holds." Another elder staggered back. "It won't break." The flames hadn't accepted the oath. "She's holding it," the spirit seer whispered. "She's fighting him." From the other side, Malric's eyes fluttered open. "Ivy." Somewhere beneath 1,000 tons of stone, a girl stirred. Ivy's fingers twitched, barely enough to disturb the dust on the seal stone floor. Her breath came in ragged gasps. The pain of spirit collapse still clung to her ribs, but the echo of someone called her back. A fire in her chest flickered. She reached inward and felt him. He was trying to leave. No, she whispered. Her fingers lit with pale light. The mark on her palm glowed, then blazed like starlight, cutting through the darkness. You don't get to leave me, she murmured. Not when I'm still here. The bond pulled taut again. Above, Malric cried out as his heart seared anew, not from loss, but from contact. She's awake. Luvina screamed. She's fighting back. Malric's clawed hand slammed against the stone as strength surged back through his blood. Ivy, he rasped. In the tomb, Ivy sat up, trembling. The silver pup, the god's soul, still lay curled in her arms. It lifted its head, ears perked. Is it him? It asked. She smiled through tears. He came. A soft hum rose between them, the mark rebinding. Not forced. Not divine. Chosen. Far above, on the spirit altar, the fires exploded into gold and violet. The elders shielded their faces. Malric stood again. He was still half wolf, still bleeding, but his eyes were alive and glowing with her light. The bond could not be broken, because it had become something new. Not an imprint, but a promise. Chapter 20. The Mother Without a Crown. The forest was wrong. Wind howled between broken trees like lost children wailing for their mother. Where once there was a border of ash and pine stood a gaping tear in the world itself. Magic bled through its edges. Not golden or white, but thick with smoke and memory. A place where the veil between flesh and soul was thinner than a whisper. Malric fell to his knees at its threshold. His breathing was uneven, shallow, like the forest refused him air. The silver thread of the broken bond still pulsed at his chest, faint and flickering. He clutched it in both hands like a prayer or a wound. Ivy, he rasped, pressing his brow to the ground, hoping the earth still remembered her steps. But she was not here. Not in this world. Not yet. Below, far below, the dream cracked. Ivy stood alone within it. Light did not reach her. Sound bent backward. The shattered mirror of her spirit realm was filled with old symbols and rotting prophecies, bleeding words across the air like wounds that wouldn't close. Time had ceased here. Or maybe time had been waiting. Before her, the last splinter of the wolf god hovered, neither pup nor shadow, only a flickering silver echo. It blinked at her with uncertain eyes. Are you ready? It asked, voice echoing like water over bone. Ivy stepped barefoot across the shattered plain. Each step left a glowing footprint behind, soft red light blooming in the dark. I'm not your queen, she said gently, brushing tangled hair from her face. I won't wear the crown they built from your bones. The soul flickered. Then what are you? She bent down, cradled it in her arms. Its body was weightless, its fur still warm. Her voice broke when she spoke again. I'm your mother. A long silence. Then a sigh, not hers, but the spirit's. And if I must sleep again, it murmured, will you come find me? I'll hold you through every century, she whispered. But not as a god. Not as salvation. Only as love. Ivy lifted her hand. Blood pooled at the corners of her mouth. Her lip was split from biting down too hard. That same blood now painted the ruins of the oath etched into her palm. The mark glowed, dimly, shakily, before flaring with violent light. Malric, she said aloud, her voice trembling. Do you still want me? The bond stirred. Not in her mind, not in her chest, but in the world beyond. Like something turning toward her from a great distance. It was enough. She spun, gathering the last of the burning oath sigils around her in a crescent arc. The shadows of her past, the god-devoted girl who burned villages, the silent bride of the grave, the frightened girl who thought love was only offered in chains, they all stood behind her now, watching. But none of them wore her skin anymore. I'm going back, Ivy said. With or without a crown. Then she ran. straight through the echoing fracture of memory, across the burning bridge of spiralight, up into the waiting storm. Vex watched from the trees. Cloaked in shadow, eyes rimmed with gold and ancient fury, he saw the rip in the veil widen. He felt her presence even before she stepped out. It struck like thunder in the spine, like blood singing in forbidden tongues. He whispered at last, and the wind answered in silver flame. The forest caught fire without burning. First the trees bent backward. Then the animals fled. Then even the shadows knew to kneel. And she came. Barefoot. Uncrowned. Hair wild with ash and blood, skin glowing like a temple fire. The oathmark on her palm still pulsed, no longer a prisoner's chain, but a tether forged anew. Behind her trailed smoke, no longer the ruin of her old self, but the herald of what she had become. Twin wolves walked at her back. Not real. Not yet. But the outlines were there, mirrored halves of something no god could control, no priest could bind. Her eyes glowed red. No longer only the girl. No longer only the vessel. Ivy. The mother without a crown. And somewhere, far across the forest, across the soil that still tasted her blood, Malric gasped. He saw her. He felt her. He opened his mouth, and her name broke free like a howl. Ivy. She stopped. Not because she heard him, but because she knew. The fire curled around her ankles, coiling like a lover returning home. Her gaze turned toward the east, where the silver thread still pulled weakly, stubbornly, from his chest. She smiled, soft and ruined and holy. "I'm coming back," she whispered. Then the ground beneath her cracked. And the forest knelt. Vex's mouth curled into a smile. "Good girl," he murmured. "No crown. No title. Only fire and want. They'll all kneel in the end." But in his eyes, something flickered. Uncertainty. Or fear. Because behind her, that flame was not fading. It was growing. And somewhere deep beneath the ground, the buried gods stirred. Chapter 21. The Red Moon's Seduction. The wind in Ashglen did not whisper, it moaned. Between the twisted roots of the withered forest, ash and red moonlight mingled like breath on a mirror. Ivy stumbled through the mist with bare feet and bloodless lips, each step a splintered promise of freedom. Her hair flowed wild, catching the light in silvered streaks, and her skin, translucent with exertion, bore the marks of more than just escape. The burn of her still unstable imprint surged beneath the hollow of her ribs, flickering like a fevered second heartbeat. Every pulse threatened to crack her in two. Malric's name buzzed behind her eyes, not memory, not even longing anymore, just a tether of unbearable pressure pulling her toward something she could no longer name. But she wasn't alone. The air thickened. Shadows shifted. A whisper danced through the brambles. "Do you miss him?" The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once, warm and slick like honey spiked with venom. Ivy turned sharply, spine tight, teeth clenched. Nothing. Then a shimmer to her left. A glimmering surface emerged from the fog, smooth, crystalline, as if the forest had conjured a mirror from its roots. Ivy stepped closer, breath stuttering. It was him. Malric. He stood beyond the glass, lips parted as if caught mid-breath, arms outstretched, eyes the same molten silver that had always burned into her. He looked pained. Real. Her throat tightened. "No," she whispered. "No, you're not." But the illusion leaned forward, pressing one palm against the glass. It rippled, as if water. His voice was low, coaxing. "Ivy," it murmured, "you've always run. Even when I gave you everything. Even when I bled." She took a step back. "You're not real." The illusion blinked. A single tear slipped down his cheek. "Aren't I? You're still wearing my mark." The imprint at her sternum blazed. Ivy fell to her knees. He stepped through the glass. Not as mist. Not as shadow. As flesh. His fingers brushed her cheek. Her lips parted involuntarily, throat trembling. Every nerve screamed, run, bite, burn, but her body betrayed her, leaning forward as if drawn by gravity itself. "I would never leave you," the illusion whispered. "Come back to me. Let the pain stop." He kissed her, softly, reverently, as though she were a shrine. For a breathless second, Ivy forgot the tomb, forgot the blood, forgot the truth. Then, a slash of pain. A scent, iron, burnt cedar, lightning. Another hand grabbed her wrist. Real. Malric. The imprint seared like it had been struck by lightning. "Ivy," he growled, voice hoarse with desperation. "Don't let him in." Her body jerked as if from a drowning spell. The illusion wavered. She spun toward the real Malric, panting, fingers clutching his soaked shirt. But her gaze searched him like a haunted animal. "How do I know?" she rasped. "How do I know you're not another ghost?" He didn't answer. He just pressed her hand to his chest. And she felt it. The raw, erratic beat. His heart. Not conjured. Not smooth. Scarred. "I'm real," he breathed. "I'm here. And I would rip myself apart before I let them take you." She stared at him. Then slapped him. Hard. His head jerked to the side, and for a moment, he stood motionless. Tears slipped from her eyes. "You left me. I came back. You didn't fight for me. I bled for you. I don't know what's real anymore." He grabbed her arms. "This." And he kissed her like the world was ending. Like it already had. His mouth on hers was not gentle. It was messy, shivering, broken. His tears mingled with hers. His hands trembled where they gripped her waist. "Ivy," he said against her lips. "Don't burn the mark. Please." But her eyes had gone wide, red moon reflecting in her irises like blood in snow. The imprint on her chest flared, brighter, wilder. She stepped away from him, light gathering at her palms. "I'm done being bound." Malric roared. "No." He lunged forward, but the flames burst outward. Not from rage. From pain. Her body trembled violently, flames licking her skin without burning it. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. He caught her anyway, arms wrapping around her, pulling her against his chest. "You're not alone," he snarled through clenched teeth. "You never were." But she was sobbing now, head against his shoulder, whispering, "I just wanted you to come back." "Then let me," he said. And she collapsed. The fire dimmed. The imprint flickered, but did not die. A new presence slithered into the clearing, laughter like silk on stone. Vex. He stood at the forest edge, red robes rustling as if moved by an unseen wind. His eyes glowed with mirth and malice. He clapped once, slow and mocking. "Bravo." Malric turned, low growl ripping from his chest. Vex tilted his head. "So much power. So much love. You should know something, dear child." Ivy stirred in Malric's arms. Vex's smile widened. "The more you love him, the sooner he'll die." Then he vanished into smoke. Chapter 22. A Thorn in the Spirit's Eye. The moonlight over Ashglen burned red. Not the hue of promise or desire, but of reckoning. Of blood, memory, and ash. The wind dragged dust over the stones of the tribe's central hall, where torches flickered against ancient walls etched with the vows of old alphas. They had brought her in chains. Ivy's head hung, silver-streaked hair matted with sweat and forest grime. Her wrists bled from the spirit-forged manacles, seared to punish any resistance, even a thought. Around her, Ridge, the acting chieftain in Malric's absence, stood flanked by a semicircle of elders cloaked in mourning black. "She bears the red imprint," spat one, an older female with her face painted in runes of purity. "The mark of corrupted union." "The soul fire that should have been divine now seethes with venom," added another, as if the moon cursed her womb and made her a vessel of rot. Ivy did not respond. Her lips were cracked. Her chest rose and fell with effort, but her eyes, though dulled, remained unbroken. Luvina stepped forward. "She is not a curse," she said, voice shaking. "She is a child of the moon bond, a mother of rebirth. You fear what you do not understand." You would speak of understanding, Ridge said coldly, when it is you who taught her the path to the Forbidden Seal. You who helped Malric bind her through outlawed rites. Luvina's hands trembled. I did what was needed. She is no threat. But then, from the shadows, a new voice, low and amused. Wrong, said Vex. He emerged with the grace of something serpentine. Robes of emerald and shadow wrapped around his lean frame, and his eyes shimmered with too much knowledge. You see her merely as a woman, a mother, a vessel. But she is none of those things anymore. His gaze met Ivy's. She is a storm sealed in flesh, and now the storm awakens. Luvina turned to him in horror. You twisted this. You spun half-truths into prophecy. Vex's smile deepened. Perhaps. But who listens to truth when lies feel more sacred? With a flick of his fingers, a circle of runes ignited around Luvina's feet. She gasped as a chain of light wrapped her throat, yanking her down to her knees. Her scream was raw, not of pain, but of betrayal. Luvina Saret, Ridge pronounced, you are stripped of spiritual rank. Your bond with the ancients is severed. Luvina convulsed. Her eyes rolled back as spectral tendrils pulled from her spine, her soul wrung into a translucent version of herself, a ghost-like echo, shivering, weeping. Let her be a warning, said Ridge. And Ivy, barely upright, whispered no. Her voice was more breath than sound, but it cracked like thunder across the hall. No more ghosts. The elders ignored her. Ridge raised a hand. The mirror serpent awaits. Let her be judged beneath its gaze. They dragged her again. Down, through tunnels carved by wolves whose bones had long since turned to powder. Down, where the air turned thick with age and venom. Ivy could barely stand. Her spirit flickered, feverish with residual soul fire and phantom bonds. Then, darkness parted into a chamber of scales and reflections. The mirror serpent's well. Liquid shimmered, coiling with sentient poison. The well hissed and breathed like a slumbering beast, its waters silver and green and ever-changing. Ivy was pushed to the edge. She fell. The toxin bit instantly. It burned into her memories. Her laughter with Malric beneath the aspen trees. His voice whispering against her nape. The press of his palm over her womb when she told him about the child that never came. Gone. It stripped the warmth, replaced it with cold illusions. In the poison's grip, she saw herself holding Malric's hand as fire raged behind them, and then saw her letting go, watching his body consumed in red light while she stood untouched. Again and again. You ruin him. You are the reason the tribes will fall. No, she moaned, curling tighter. If you hadn't existed, he would have been king without blood. Her heart tore. I never wanted a crown, she screamed. I only wanted. The poison whispered, you. She clutched at her chest, fingernails digging into her skin, trying to scrape the memory away. Somewhere far, far beyond the stone and blood and wells, a wolf howled. Malric. He had not stopped running since the moment he'd felt her agony in his spine. His lungs burned, his paws were cracked, but he didn't stop. Through forests and ravines, over sacred lines and clan borders. The call had ripped through his ribcage like an axe. He hadn't even known what words she said, just that she was fading. His claws tore into Ridge's guards at the well entrance. The door cracked from the impact of his shoulder. Shouts echoed, spears rose. He didn't stop. I've why, he roared. She didn't respond. Not at first. Then her hand moved. Blind reaching. He fell to his knees beside the well, dragging her from the fluid, snarling at anyone who dared come close. Her body was broken, skin mottled with venom blotches and scars. Her hair floated like a dark veil across his arms. She looked at him with fogged eyes. And whispered, You're him. A beat. Who, he said, though his voice cracked with dread. Her eyes searched his, uncertain. The one I forgot, but didn't want to. His breath hitched. I'm Malric, he whispered. You never needed to remember that. You only needed to feel it. Tears welled. But they didn't fall from her eyes, they fell from his. For the first time, Malric wept openly. Not from pain, not from pride, but from fear. That the girl he would burn the world for might never fully return to him. Chapter 23. The Alpha Must Bleed First. Wind screamed along the cliffs of Ashglen, tugging at cloaks and banners, scattering the scent of blood and ash like curses. The pale sky overhead stretched empty, as if the moon itself had abandoned the rite. And at the center of the clearing, beneath the skeletal arch of the cleansing altar, Malric stood with one hand clenched around a dagger made from his own fang. He did not look like an alpha. He looked like a man walking into ruin with his back straight and his heart bare. Ivy lay still in the healer's tent just beyond the altar ring, her soul dimmed, her mind fragile from the poisons of the serpent well. Her name was not spoken in the crowd, but it was thick in the air like smoke. She carries the spirit sickness, Ridge snarled from the elder circle, fists curled into the folds of his ceremonial robes. She brings ruin with her, death, madness, broken packs. Even her mate was fooled by her fire. She is my mate, Malric said. He stepped forward, slow and steady, each word a deliberate act of defiance. And she has bled enough for your gods. The dagger gleamed in the sun, and a collective breath hissed from the assembly as he knelt before the cleansing stone. His voice dropped, calm as death. Let my blood replace hers. Shock rippled through the circle. That is not the rite, Ridge barked. The cleansing requires a forsaking, not a bargain. I am forsaking, Malric said without looking up. I forsake the throne. The name. The blood you think is pure. He pressed the edge of the fang blade to his palm. The hiss of flesh parting was sharp, and red bloomed like a rose across his hand. At the scent of blood, murmurs turned to shouts. Some of the younger wolves recoiled. Others pressed forward, breath caught in their throats. Vex stood silently near the edge of the circle, lips curved in a quiet, satisfied smile. He spoke only when the blood touched the stone. Shall we tell them, he said, voice light as mist, that the Alpha's heir you crown was never one of you? Malric stilled. Vex raised a single hand, conjuring a shimmer of memory. A vision bled through the air, dark hair, golden eyes not quite like Malric's, a woman cloaked in frost and foreign stars. Your mother, Vex said, bore you in secret. To a man from beyond the bleak line. One with no mark, no howl, no spirit song. No, Malric said, but the word had no strength. Blood betrays itself, Vex murmured. The line was broken before you were born. You were never a true alpha. Cries rose like a storm. He lied. Heretic. His claim is void. The elders moved swiftly. Ribbons of silver light bound Malric's wrists, glowing with the magic of the pack. The burning of the bond etched across his collarbone. He did not flinch. He looked up only when footsteps sounded across the stone. Ivy. Her bare feet were silent on the earth, her breath shallow. Her hair clung to her skin in damp silver strands, and the mark between her brows still flickered like a half-burned moon. She saw the blood first. Then the shattered edges of his bond unraveling on his chest. Then the hollow in his eyes as he knelt, hands outstretched, offering the last pieces of himself. No, she whispered, staggering forward. No, no, no. What are you doing? Ridge stepped between them. He is not of us. He trades blood for the favor of a spirit-cursed witch. Don't, Ivy choked, voice rising. Don't say that word. Malric met her gaze. You're supposed to be the one who leads, she sobbed. Not this. I would rather bleed, he said, than let them damn you again. You think this proves something? That it saves me. Her hands trembled as she grabbed the front of his shirt, stained with his own blood. I'm the curse. I am. You, her voice cracked, you're not supposed to sacrifice yourself for a curse. You are not a curse, he said simply. You're the only vow I haven't broken. His voice had none of the sharpness it once did. Only gravity. Only the quiet weight of truth. I swore myself to you the first night you burned, he whispered. Not as an alpha. Not as a wolf. As a man. Behind them, The ritualists conferred in hushed tones. The elders marked Malric's exile. The pack murmured, caught between disbelief and rage. But Ivy's attention was only on him. "You'll be hunted," she said. "I already am." Her eyes shimmered with tears, then closed. "You stupid, stubborn, beautiful fool." His smile broke something in her. "Go," she whispered. "Go before I say something I can't take back." But he didn't move. Not until the wolves dragged him to his feet, unmarked and unclaimed. They shoved him toward the cliff's edge, where the path out of Ashglen began. He turned once, only once, and Ivy saw it, the bone-deep sorrow, the unspoken goodbye. Then he vanished into the wind. Night fell. The fire circle dwindled. The pack broke into whispers. No one noticed Ivy slip away. Not until hours later, when the scent of smoke curled from the burial pyres. She stood alone beneath the red moon, the coals of the Alpha's rite still burning. In her palm, she held the shard of the Fong dagger. Her voice was steady. "With your blood," she said, "I will destroy the bond that cursed me." And she pressed the shard to her skin. The old wolf mark flared to life, silver, crimson, and flame, searing itself back onto her body in defiance of every exile. She collapsed to her knees, gasping, tears falling freely. But when she looked up, her eyes no longer held doubt. Only fire. Chapter 24. Try to love the monster. The feast of packed blood was already burning when Ivy stepped into the broken heart of the wolf ancestor tower. Ash swirled through the high chamber like falling snow. Great ribs of petrified bone arched overhead, forming a cathedral that once held the soul of the first wolf. Now it was nothing more than a temple to forgetting until tonight. Vex waited at the high altar, robed in deep crimson, his pale hands resting on the jaws of a bleached wolf skull. 100 candles danced in the gloom, casting flickering reflections across the pool of spirit wine at his feet. His smile was polished, teeth gleaming like knives. "You came," he said, voice coiling around her like a velvet rope. "I feared your loyalty might still flicker in that half-dead Alpha's name." "I'm not here for loyalty," Ivy answered. Her voice was hollow, her limbs trembling but steady. "Only the trade." Vex gestured, and the shadows drew back like obedient pets. The twisted mirror stones shimmered, revealing what lay beyond, the image of Malric, half-wolf, half-man, curled in agony in the ashlands. His skin cracked with silver fissures where the blood pact had burned him. His howl was silent, but it echoed in Ivy's bones. "I give you this," Vex said, circling her. "Your monster breathing. Whole. Unshattered. And in return, you give me what only the moon has yet touched, your wolf soul." He brushed her hair from her shoulder. "And your body, of course. You were always the key. The perfect conduit. The flaw and the fire." She didn't flinch. "So be it." The ritual circle ignited. Heat bloomed beneath her bare feet as the runes flared, binding her in place. She stood alone in the center of the star-blood sigil, breath shallow, as her gown of woven dusk crumbled into ash and fell around her like dark snow. Vex's voice became incantation. "Let the veil part. Let flesh and fire fuse. Let the beast rise." And the world turned red. She blinked, and was no longer in the tower. The Dree forest pressed in on all sides, lush with poisonous bloom. Trees wept black sap. The air pulsed with forbidden scent, fur, desire, ruin. And at the center, he waited. Not Malric. Not the man who had bled at the altar for her. This one was taller. Wilder. Scarred along the jaw, one eye golden, the other drowned in shadow. His body shimmered with the promise of both pain and devotion, his voice low as thunder over a dying fire. "You gave yourself to him," the monster whispered, tilting her chin. "You called for me. Do you still know how to love what you summoned?" Ivy staggered back. "You're not real." "No," he said, "but I'm everything you feared he would become. And everything you longed for in secret." His claws traced down her arm, not cruelly, but reverently. Would you still open yourself to me if I no longer remembered your name? She gasped as heat burst along her spine. Not from the touch. From within. The soul fire. It was waking. The monster's hands cupped her waist, pulled her flush against his burning chest. His mouth hovered above hers. You used to tremble like this when he kissed you. Is this any different? Ivy shook her head, then stopped. Her vision spun, but her core held firm. Even here. Even broken. Tears stung her lashes. If I become this, if the wolf inside me devours what I was, would he still touch me the same? A flicker stirred in the air. And the answer came, not from the dream, but from the bond. You always were my monster, Ivy. I never wanted to save you from it. The voice. Malric. Real. Distant. Raw with pain, but real. She turned, saw him, not the shadow, not the nightmare, but him, standing just beyond the veil of flame. His spirit bled at the edges, as if he'd torn through wards to reach her. I remember that look, he said. You had it the day we met. Right before you aimed a knife at my heart. Ivy collapsed to her knees. Her skin split in glowing patterns as the wolf mark consumed her. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. He knelt before her, took her face in his ruined hands. I never left. She sobbed. I'm not worth it. You are, he said, forehead pressed to hers, because I chose you. Not once. Always. And then the flames exploded. She screamed, not from pain, but surrender. The wolf within her reared, and she did not resist it. Instead, Ivy turned to the tether Vex had anchored through the dream and reached. The circle reversed. The sigils inverted. Power ripped through her, howling, ancient, divine. Vex stumbled back in the real world, blood dripping from his nose. What have you done? The temple cracked. The god's soul, once meant to be channeled into her womb as a vessel, instead surged into her spine, curling like a serpent of fire. Ivy stood at the heart of the maelstrom, hair burning like a comet's tail, body naked and unashamed. I tried to love the monster in me, she said, voice low as prophecy. Turns out he loved me first. She stepped from the ritual circle, each footfall shattering stone. The tower began to collapse. Vex reached for his knife, snarling. You're still bound to my spell. No, she said, lifting her hand. A ripple of flame licked from her palm and tore his illusion apart. Your spell was made for sacrifice. I rewrote it for resurrection. A sudden silence fell. Then came the sound of thunder, not from the sky, but from below. The spirit fire she had summoned spiraled into the tower's bones, tearing down every false seal, every lie written in blood and pact. The wolf ancestor's throne exploded in light, and Ivy turned to face the ruin. She didn't run, didn't flinch. I was made to die for him, she whispered, lips split with pain. But this time, I'll live to burn you all. The floor cracked. Vex shrieked. The tower fell. And Ivy, cloaked in godfire and ruin, walked into the storm. Not a curse. Not a vessel. Not a girl who begged to be loved. A monster. His monster. The only one left who remembered how to love with teeth. Chapter 25. The first to howl is the first to die. The wind howled before the wolves did. Above the ravaged plateau of Godspine Hill, ash drifted in curls, like snow scorched black. Ivy stood alone beneath the cracked wolf idol, her cloak torn, the fire of the god's essence still trailing from her palms. Her hair clung to her face, matted with sweat and blood. Behind her, the old stones bled, a trail of Vex rites still stained in the cracks. And before her, Vex. The High Seer of Ashthorn Pack wore the ceremonial mantle now ragged with claw marks, but the madness in his gaze gleamed unbroken. The symbols etched across his skin pulsed, alive, wrong, pulling. Still breathing, little curse, he crooned. Even after that filthy ritual. Impressive. Almost worthy. I'm not here to prove my worth, Ivy said hoarsely. Her voice cracked, and the fire in her limbs throbbed like an aftershock. I'm here to end you. He laughed. And become the monster they always feared? No, she whispered. To protect the one who never feared me. The sacred winds shifted. Behind her, the ground cracked with a thunderous howl. Malric. He came not as a man, but as beast. The silver streak of his fur was streaked dark with blood, his claws raw from the climb. He landed beside her in a flurry of breath and earth, his golden eyes locking to hers, still tethered, still burning. You should have run, Ivy said. You should have waited for me, he growled. Vex hissed between his teeth. Touching. But love like yours poisons. Let me fix it. He raised his hands, and from the chasm behind him, they emerged. The traitor wolves. Ash thorn blood, but wearing no crest, no loyalty. Eyes glazed, teeth bared, limbs jerking like broken marionettes. Vex had fed them lies, twisted their bonds, summoned them like shadows to drown his failure in war. And so the battle began. Malric lunged first, a blur of silver muscle, slamming into Vex before he could chant again. Claws raked across ribs. Blood spattered the stones. Ivy stood back to back with him, her hands glowing with the last threads of the wolf god's flame, flinging arc after arc into the oncoming wolves. Her voice rang in the chaos. Don't kill them if they can be freed. We don't have time. Malric shouted, dodging a blow that nearly cleaved his shoulder. But Ivy had already stepped forward. She touched one of the snarling wolves, her fingers pressing to his forehead, and whispered something too soft for war. The wolf collapsed in a heap. Not dead. Sleeping. Vex snarled. Weak. Always weak. You don't understand power, Ivy snapped, the god's flame coiling up her arms. You only know fear. Their clash was brutal. He struck with dark rituals, claws dipped in soul-splitting spells. She answered with light that singed time itself. Around them, ashthorn wolves fought each other, brother against brother, sister against sister, until the entire Godspine Hill became a memory of pack torn asunder. And then Malric staggered. A mark had bloomed across his chest, a spiraled black sigil, not of this realm. Vex grinned. The soul-split sigil, Ivy gasped. The soul-split sigil, Malric said through clenched teeth. I die, he inherits it. He dies, I take it. No escape. You let him mark you, she cried. It was the only way to keep him tethered. To keep him from becoming pure curse. Ivy's knees buckled. You idiot. I know, he smiled. Blood in his teeth. That's why I came. Idiots don't leave the ones they love behind. Vex lunged again, and this time, Ivy stepped between. The impact drove her to the ground. Her shoulder cracked. Something in her ribs shattered. She gasped as the wolf god's flame trembled, then fractured. She felt the power inside her break loose, not fully gone, but wild, unbound. And in that moment, as the battle paused for a breathless heartbeat, she looked at Malric. I can't hold it, she rasped. If I die here, the power will consume everyone. Then don't die, he whispered. Just stay. Her breath hitched. You trust me to come back from this? His hand cupped her face, trembling. Even if you never do, I'll wait at the edge of the world. And then Ivy rose. All of her. Not just flesh, but flame. Not just pain, but memory. She reached into the flickering well of Wolf God's fury and turned it not to destruction, but seal. With one final word, enough, she cast the flame around Vex like a noose. He howled. The sky cracked. Blood rained. His spirit fractured into fragments, each burning with the hate he'd tried to plant in others. His body shattered into dust. And silence followed. Ivy collapsed. Malric caught her before she hit the stone, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. Only her shallow breath. His shivering hands. You're bleeding, she murmured. So are you. Her fingers clutched weakly at his collar. You think we'll survive this? I think I already died once, he said softly, the day they dragged you away. Everything after this is just us stealing back time. She coughed, a half laugh. Then let's steal faster. Their eyes met. And in that moment, even the gods looked away. Above them, the heavens cracked. The wolf god's cradle shattered in the sky. The ancient flame, once coiled within ivy, exploded in a ring of molten red, lighting the whole field. And just before darkness swallowed them both, Vex's voice, distant and dying, "You think this is over? You think you've crowned her queen?" A beat. A breath. The goddess has yet to wear her crown. Then all turned black. And beneath the rising red moon, two figures lay cradled in silence, their marks pulsing, their breath shallow, as if fate itself had paused. And the wolves of the world held their howls, waiting. Chapter 26. The goddess never needed a crown. 3 days passed, and Ivy did not stir. Malric sat by the stone bench, the heatless fire in the shattered brazier casting a ghost of its former warmth across the ancient wolf temple. He hadn't moved except to fetch water, crush herbs, or soak yet another cloth in the wolf flame tincture he brewed in secret, his hands raw from grinding shards of charred root and silver pine resin. No one asked him to stay. No one dared ask him to leave. Outside, the murmurs had grown louder. The wolves were restless. The blood moon had passed, the battle was done, but peace refused to descend. Ivy's body had survived, but her soul, no one could say. No one except him. He pressed the edge of the damp cloth to her brow and whispered into the hollow space between them. "You promised me a crownless goddess," he murmured, lips ghosting her temple. "But I don't care if you burn every altar. Just come back." In the world of dreams, Ivy stood barefoot in snow that didn't melt. Pale trees rose around her, their branches curved like open hands, and at the center stood a mirror. No frame, no reflection, no face, only the voice. "You fought to be chosen. And still, you begged to be claimed." "Why?" Ivy clenched her fists. "Because I was afraid no one would see me if I didn't belong to something. And now? I'm tired," she whispered, "of waiting to be allowed. So crown yourself. Or vanish." The mirror shimmered. In its place stood a figure cloaked in ash-gray veils, faceless and flickering like firelight behind silk. The unseen one. The one the old howls sang of. The goddess that never came. Ivy looked her in the veil and, without kneeling, said, "Then I choose myself." The world cracked open. She awoke with her hand curled into Malric's shirt. His eyes snapped open. He didn't speak, only cupped her jaw, his thumb trembling as if afraid she'd dissolve. "I'm here," Ivy rasped, and then, smiling faintly, added, "Did you burn another stew?" "Only one," he said hoarsely. "Maybe two." She touched the edge of his collar. "You stayed. I always will." Outside, the wolves waited. Ivy could feel them like the wind through broken walls, tension rising, the heavy scent of judgment in their throats. She rose. Her knees shook. Malric moved to catch her, but she waved him off. She didn't want to be carried. Not now. Not today. The goddess had offered her a question. She had an answer to give. The ruined doors groaned as she pushed through, the cracked stones of the temple courtyard bright with morning frost. All eyes turned to her, Vex's allies, those who had once cheered her exile, the ones who had called her curse. Luvina stood nearest the front, expression unreadable, the ancient wolf staff glowing softly in her hand. Ivy did not speak loudly. "I know what you want," she said, her voice slow, measured. "You want a miracle. You want a sign. You want your gods to come crawling back and tell you were always right." She took another step forward. "But they never chose you. And they never chose me." Gasps. Movement rippled through the crowd like a beast twitching in its skin. "I waited," she said, her voice rising. "I bled. I died. And still they were silent. So here I am, not as your saint. Not as your curse. But as something else." She bit her palm. Blood welled crimson and fell upon the cracked wolf seal beneath her feet. The earth shuddered. Bones stirred. From the depths of the shattered altar, the remains of ancient wolves, long buried, long forgotten, rose, their forms spectral and flickering with the memory of howl and war. They circled her not as ghosts, but as echoes of ancestry. One of them, a rib-thin creature with eyes like storm glass, opened its maw. She never wanted sheep, the soul voice rang. She waited for the one who wouldn't kneel. Silence. Then Luvina stepped forward and bowed. That night, Ivy sat atop the same broken temple steps, legs folded, arms wrapped around her knees. The stars blinked like uncertain eyes above her, the fire beside her nothing but a low ember. Malric came silently, sat without a word. "I thought choosing yourself would feel triumphant," she muttered. "It usually just feels lonely," he replied. She looked at him. "Then why did you do it?" He turned toward her. "Because I saw something I'd rather follow than worship." The words fell between them, heavy and soft. Ivy hesitated, then asked, "If I said I wanted you beside me, not because fate bound us or fire-branded us, but because I choose you, what would you say?" Malric didn't blink. He leaned closer, his voice low. "Then I'd say yes. Every damn time." She smiled, thin, trembling. "Then don't kneel," she whispered. He laughed under his breath. "I wasn't planning to." She leaned her forehead to his. Beneath the stars, beneath the burned-out eyes of ancient gods, Ivy whispered into his breath, "I'm done asking for crowns. But maybe I'll make one." His voice was the quiet of a howl withheld. "I'll be the blade that defends it." She closed her eyes. And for the first time in her life, she slept without waiting for someone else to wake her. Chapter 27, Razor Tide. The sky over the Mubat cliffs had never bled this red. Winds sliced through the night like sharpened bone, howling through the hollows of the peaks as if echoing the grief of ancient wolves. Ivy stood at the edge of the crag, her cloak torn and soot-streaked, the last remnants of wolf fire flickering along her limbs like ghost lanterns. Her hands trembled, but not from fear. Below her, the blood oath pool churned, once a quiet spring veiled by prophecy, now a restless, seething tide of red. The ground had cracked open hours ago with the first howl of a possessed wolf. The sound had come from Malric. "Don't," she had begged him then. "Don't let it take you." But the fragment of Vex had awakened. It hadn't come with grand gestures or declarations of resurrection. No, Vex remnant, too clever for that, had slithered into Malric's body through the old scar splitting his spine, the one Ivy had once kissed as he slept. It was only a whisper at first. A flicker in his gaze. A twitch of his clawed hand. Then the wolves began to tear themselves apart. The soul splitters, those cursed with fractured bonds, had been quiet for weeks, feral but containable. Tonight, they rose in frenzy. Teeth gnashing, foam-licked mouths unhinged. Ivy had watched them turn on their own kin, their eyes gleaming with something that wasn't madness. It was memory. A memory that didn't belong to them. Vex, she spat into the wind, gripping the talisman around her neck, carved from the scorched antler of a forgotten god. "I know you're listening." The response came in her bones, not her ears. A pulsing resonance. Malric's body had gone still mid-battle, his blade slack in one hand, his other clutching his side. The wound that had once almost killed him had reopened, not in blood, but in fire. "You called me a monster," Ivy whispered, stepping down from the crag, walking toward him through the chaos. Wolves snarled and tore at one another behind her, but none touched her. Her presence was no longer mortal. She burned too brightly. She reached him just as he fell to his knees, eyes wide and blind. "Ivy," he rasped, though his voice wasn't his alone. Vex's laughter leaked between syllables, oily and thin. "You want a vessel?" she growled, unsheathing the blade she'd sworn never to use. "You want to speak through him? You speak through me." She drove the blade across her own palm, the blood hissing against the cold air. With her other hand, she pressed the bleeding skin to the center of Malric's chest. Their marks, hers blazing with the heat of defiance, his flickering with decay, sang in twisted unison. The forbidden fire seal. It had been a myth. A rite never completed, because it required one to act as both the summoner and the consumed. "Vex," she screamed, her voice rising above the frenzy, "I offer you my flesh, my soul, my fire. Come out of him and into me if you dare." And he did. Ivy's scream was guttural, torn from the pit of her stomach as his essence tore into her. It wasn't possession, it was warfare. Their wills clashed, colliding with the roar of dying stars. Her vision shattered into 100 memories not her own. Lust, ambition, betrayal, pain. He tried to drown her in them, but Ivy didn't waver. "I am not yours to command," she said into the maelstrom, "but you are mine to end." One by one, the wolves collapsed. Their bodies spasmed, then stilled, as if strings had been cut. The remaining wolves backed away in terror, sensing the shift. Malric collapsed beside her, the corruption burned from his flesh. But his eyes, when they opened, were blank. She stared at him, hands blood-soaked, heart unraveling. "Malric," she whispered. He blinked slowly. "Do I know you?" The knife of it sank into her ribs like an old friend. She smiled, cracked and furious and breaking, and rose to her feet. "I'm the woman you once promised to burn the world for," she said softly, voice thick. "The one you used to say smelled like storms and sins." He just looked at her. Empty. Curious. Distant. Ivy didn't cry. Instead, she turned, teeth bared, and seized him by the collar of his tunic. "Then let's test it," she hissed. She dragged him, stumbling, dazed, to the edge of the blood-oath pool. The water surged, moonlight splitting across its surface like silver claws. Ivy forced herself not to waver. "Not this time. I won't beg you to remember me," she said. "But I'll give you the choice." She shoved him in. The splash was a wound in the silence. The pool closed over his head. For a moment, there was only stillness. Then Ivy turned and walked away. She climbed the jagged steps of the cliff until she reached the summit again. Below, the wolves were beginning to stir, freed from Vex's last ghost. The stars blinked, distant and cold. Ivy reached to her collarbone. Her alpha mark pulsed faintly under her skin. She pressed her fingers to it, then, slowly, she tore it free. The air gasped. The wolves below howled. Blood dripped from her neck, shimmering like molten light. Ivy raised the mark in her hand, holding it to the moon like an offering or a warning. "No more waiting," she said into the wind. "I'm choosing my fate now." And she let the mark fall. Chapter 28. Unmake the Salt. Salt wind whispered across the broken stones as Ivy stepped into the heart of the old world. The salt source, what remained of it, was a wound carved into the mountain's spine, a well so ancient it pulsed with the breath of things long dead. Its edges were crusted with the residue of countless sacrifices, glimmering in sickly hues of violet and gray. They said this place remembered every oath ever bled into it, every curse, every god who refused to speak. And she was here to silence them all. The wind scraped at her skin as she walked, but she didn't flinch. She wore no armor. Only the thin wrap of black ceremonial cloth soaked in the ashes of her lineage. Wolves burned for disobedience, women drowned for being born loud, lovers torn apart for daring to choose. Luvina had tried to stop her. "You'll fracture the spine of the pack," she'd whispered, gripping Ivy's wrists hard enough to bruise. "They'll call you Wolf Slayer. God Thief." Ivy had only met her gaze, steady and dry-eyed. "Let them. I was never theirs to name." Now alone, she stood before the well. The ground sloped inward in rings like a crater, and from its depths rose a faint, rhythmic glow. It wasn't light, exactly, more like memory. Or marrow. She inhaled. Inside her, the wolf soul burned at the edges. Not the primal beast gifted by the moon, but the fractured shard she'd carved from herself the day she rejected the chain of divine inheritance. That fragment twitched now, sensing the hunger of the place. The way it beckoned all marked things to die. She stepped forward. Her foot broke the surface of salt-crusted stone, and the world tilted. Images crashed down on her, visions of chained alphas, mates who died screaming, children stillborn with the mark glowing on their necks. Ivy felt each heartbeat like a brand against her ribs. This isn't for them, she reminded herself. She descended the steps into the well. It wasn't a descent. It was a descent in concept only. Her body floated, walked, disintegrated and reformed with every blink. The air became thick with salt vapor, singing hymns in languages she didn't know she remembered. At the well's center was a basin, dry, cracked, and screaming with ancient silence. There she knelt. There she whispered, "I'm not here to offer blood." The well did not respond. But something shifted in the dark. "I'm not here to be chosen, or spared, or made whole." A low hum gathered in the stone beneath her knees. Faint symbols stirred on the walls, glowing with ancestral ink. The air tasted of old fire and buried bones. "I'm here," Ivy said, louder now, her voice scattering across the hollow, "to end what you began." She drew the dagger from her belt. It wasn't ornate, just obsidian and bone. A witch's tool. A woman's truth. With steady hands, she pressed the blade against her chest. The soul didn't bleed. It cracked. The first scream was not hers. It came from the walls, from the symbols, from the ghost-thick air. A roar of gods unworshipped, of pacts broken. She drove the dagger deeper, slicing not flesh, but the fragment of wolf tethered to divine command. It shattered in a pulse of silver fire. Salt rained down like ash. The well lit up from within, a white-hot furnace of unspoken revolt. The curses, moon debt, firstborn blood, mate madness, they peeled away from her skin like dying stars, hissing as they turned to vapor. And then, through the smoke, she saw it. His mark. Malric's. Etched faintly on the inner wall of the well, flickering like it had always been waiting. Her knees gave way. She crawled to it, hand outstretched, breath shallow. "You don't remember," she murmured, voice fraying. "But I do." She pressed her palm to it. Not to draw him back. Not to ask for anything. Just to remember. Then the stone beneath her cracked. The entire chamber began to tremble, great slabs of salt breaking apart as the curse web shattered. A scream like a dying god echoed through the mountains, and Ivy smiled through bloodied lips. "No more crowns," she whispered. And she let go. On the cliffs above the well, Luvina stood with her cloak drawn tight, a dozen loyal wolves behind her, holding the perimeter as instructed. But the moment the scream rose, they all fell to one knee. They did not know why. They only felt it, that something old and sacred had just died. Silence followed. Then dust. Then a single tremor as the mountain exhaled for the first time in millennia. And from the smoke and salt, Luvina walked forward to the fractured mouth of the well. There was no body. Only a bloodstain. No larger than a coin. Pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat lost in time. She bent down, cupped it carefully in her hands, and turned back toward the path. Behind her, the salt source began to collapse. Above her, the sky darkened, the moon fading behind crimson clouds. And ahead, somewhere in the shifting fate of wolves, the world waited to be chosen again. Chapter 29, The Last Debt. The forest was quiet in a way that felt too reverent to be natural. Even the wind didn't dare move through the leaves. Malric stood beneath the ancient trees of Lyrwyn, the so-called Breathwood, a name passed down in half-whispers and wolf lore. Here, they said, the spirits of all those who had burned their fates away to protect others still lingered. And here, nestled in its center, was the mirror of memory. He had not spoken of her name in days. Not because he'd forgotten it, he hadn't even that luxury. He had no name to forget. Only a space, burning in his chest like a wound that refused to scar. Luvina stood beside him, her expression carved from quiet granite. "You don't have to do this." "I already did," Malric said, gaze fixed on the obsidian waters ahead. "I just don't remember it." Luvina didn't argue. She knew what he was, what Ivy had made him, and what he had been before her. Malric stepped into the clearing, the trees parting like a breath exhaled, and dropped to his knees before the mirror of memory. It was not water, not glass, just a still sheet of glimmering salt mist that refused to ripple, no matter how close he leaned. He had come to remember, not out of pride or pain or even penance, but because the emptiness left in him pulsed louder than any memory ever had. "Show me," he whispered. The mirror did not shimmer. It split. A crack ran through the center, then spidered out, and from its jagged heart rose not her face, but axe. Not the softness of Ivy's mouth, or the way she laughed like she'd never been afraid, but the way she burned. Her hands pressed to cursed stone, her eyes lit with defiance in front of howling mobs. Her throat bared in offering to gods she no longer believed in, her spine refusing to bend even when her body did. He saw her bleed herself into a circle of fire to protect those who had spat on her name. He saw her mouth the words, "This is not for love. It's for freedom." And then he saw himself, holding her, smiling at her, dying for her, then forgetting. Malric doubled over with a choked sound, something between a sob and a snarl. His claws dug into the earth, into his knees, into anything to anchor him. Pain exploded in his chest like something sacred had been torn loose. "I forgot you," he whispered, to the reflection that no longer showed her face, only the aftermath of all her sacrifices. "I forgot you, and that is the worst thing I've ever done." He pressed his forehead to the salt-etched stone. The wind keened around him, finally stirring. From the mirror came one final image, Ivy, standing in front of the collapsing salt well, blood on her lips, voice barely audible. "If you can't remember me, remember this. You were loved. You were chosen. Not by fate. By me." Malric lifted his head slowly. His eyes shone crimson. Not with rage. With choice. He rose and drew his dagger. The same blade Ivy had once held to his throat when she wasn't sure if he was enemy or ally. Now he drew it across the inside of his forearm, deep and deliberate. Blood spilled, rich, alpha dark, and he dragged it across the earth before the mirror. "I refuse," he said quietly. "I refuse to live with a bond one didn't choose. I refuse to forget her. I don't want your memories. I want her." The mirror trembled. "I am not a king," he whispered. "Not anymore. I am not your sacred heir." He pressed his bleeding palm to the altar beside the pool. "I was a man who was loved," he said. "And I owe her everything." With that, he did what no alpha had done in living memory. He shattered his own alpha mark. The pain was instant. Blinding. His knees gave out, his breath vanished like smoke torn from lungs. The mark split, not with blood, but light. A searing, lunar flame that cracked down his arm and up across his chest, fracturing the symbol that had defined his rank, his power, his very bloodline. Somewhere in the forest, wolves howled. The spirits answered. The mirror exploded. When the shards settled, a path had burned itself into the forest floor, spiraling out toward the mist-veiled canyons where no map reached. A spirit of a wolf, skeletal and shining with ghost fire, padded from the undergrowth. It did not bow nor speak. It simply stared at him, then turned and began to walk. Malric rose. No crown, no memory, no name, but the one she had once whispered in the dark. And still, he followed. Chapter 30, The Accord. The water of the Spirit Creek ran clear as breath, but it didn't ripple. It didn't move. Not even when Ivy stepped into it. Her bare feet disturbed nothing. The cold should have bit into her bones, but she no longer felt cold. Or pain. Or time. Above her, the silver leaves of the moon tree rustled faintly, though there was no wind. They shimmered like sighs caught in foliage, each one glowing with old memory and the hush of forgotten prayers. She had no mark. No curse. No name, really. Just a body, rebuilt from ruin, and a face that the water now tried to show her, but even it hesitated. Ivy knelt. The surface stilled. Her reflection blinked back. Pale. Unscarred. Featureless, almost. As if the girl she once was had bled out entirely, leaving behind only something that might be human. She touched her throat. There had once been a collar there, she thought. Or had it been fangs? She didn't know. Who am I? She whispered. The creek gave no answer. Only the faintest flicker of light stirred behind her, like a shadow had stepped into the clearing without sound. But she didn't turn. Not until the air shifted. He said nothing. Not with words. Not with breath. Just the sound of one man's footstep into still water and the sudden catch in her own lungs. She rose slowly. He was taller than memory, if she had memory. He was broad in the shoulders, scarred down one side, eyes lit like dying stars. She studied him without fear, without recognition. Her head tilted slightly. Her voice was uncertain, brittle as frost on bark. Who are you? The man did not flinch. He simply stepped closer until the water barely separated them. He lifted one hand, calloused, blood-lined, and held it toward her. She looked down. Her fingers twitched. Then, slowly, Ivy placed her hand in his. He said only this, I'm the one who promised you I wouldn't let fate decide. And he began to draw. Not words. Not names. But a mark. Not the old kind, the curve brand that twisted lovers into enemies, forced wolves into chains of destiny they never chose. This was different. Simple. Clean. His finger traced her palm in one long line, then a curve, then a spiral. The center of a wolf's eye. It pulsed once, faintly, like something sleeping recognized itself. Her lips parted. He didn't press. Just held her hand in both of his, eyes steady on hers. I found you, he said softly. Without the curse. Without the bond. And? Her voice was quiet. He let go of her hand. You don't remember, he said. She shook her head. No. Should I? No, a breath. You shouldn't have to. She stepped back. Then why are you here? His answer was not words. It was a howl. Low. Broken. Beautiful. From the trees, they came. Wolves of all sizes, all colors, all bloodlines. Some limped from old war. Some had no eyes. Others glowed faintly, as if their bodies were memory made flesh. They didn't bow. They gathered. At the edge of the creek, just behind the moon tree, the statue rose. It had not been there before. Or perhaps it had waited, buried under centuries of rot and silence. Now, the wolves began to encircle it, stone paws, snout lifted toward the sky, fangs bared not in hunger, but in remembrance. Ivy turned to see it fully. A she-wolf, carved in black stone, standing over a broken mark. And above her, rising between the branches of the moon tree, came the red moon. Not cursed. Not bleeding. Just full. Just watching. Ivy trembled. Malric stood still. Then, just like breath released, she laughed. Quiet at first. Then louder, brighter. As if the thing inside her that had refused to die had finally found something worth singing about. She stepped toward him. He didn't move. She looked into his eyes and said, So you're the fool who came all this way without a bond? He nodded once. She held up her marked hand, the symbol now burned faintly in silver. You're mad, she whispered. I know. She swallowed. Then stepped into his arms. I don't remember you, she murmured. I don't need you to. But... She looked up at him. A line of tears traced down her cheek like moonlight falling. I think I want to. He leaned forward, forehead to hers. This time, the kiss didn't burn. It bloomed. From the tree above, petals of silver drifted down. The wolves howled, not in mourning, but recognition. They had witnessed the breaking of the bond. Now, they watched something better take its place. Later, days, weeks, seasons perhaps, under that same tree, the new accord would be written. By counsel. By claw. By heart. The god statue would remain, not as a reminder of power, but of choice. No longer would wolves be marked by fate. They would mark each other. With trust. With love. With the slow, hard, brave work of choosing. And on the final page of the rewritten scrolls, in ink pressed from the moonflower's sap, the last line read, "The curse was never the bond. It was the belief we couldn't choose it ourselves."